When Clara Vaughn, the ice queen who destroyed careers before breakfast, drunk dialed the employee she'd tormented for 3 years, Evan Parker should have let it ring. But that one moment of mercy on a rain-soaked Friday night would shatter every wall between them, turning a tyrant into something far more dangerous. Human. One good deed, one broken woman, one choice that would rewrite both their lives forever. Stay with me until the end of this story and drop a comment with your city name so I can see how far this tale has traveled across the world. The rain hammered against the apartment windows like an army of tiny fists demanding entry, each drop a sharp percussion in the Friday night silence that Evan Parker had been desperately craving all week. He stood at the kitchen sink, hands submerged in soapy water that had long gone lukewarm, scrubbing at the remnants of mac and cheese that clung to a small plastic plate with the tenacity of cement. The dishes could have waited. God knows everything else in his life did. But there was something meditative about the mundane task, something that quieted the constant roar of responsibility that lived in his chest like a caged animal. "Daddy?" Mia's voice drifted from the living room, soft and sleepy. "Can you read me the one about the princess who doesn't need saving?" Evan felt his shoulders drop, the tension he'd been carrying since Monday morning finally beginning to dissolve. "Give me 2 minutes, sweetheart. Let me finish these dishes and I'm all yours." "You always say 2 minutes, but it's really 5, she countered with the devastating logic only a 7-year-old could wield. He couldn't help but smile, even as exhaustion pulled at his bones like gravity. "You're too smart for your own good, you know that?" "That's what Ms. Rodriguez says too," Mia replied, and he could hear the pride in her voice, the kind of innocent confidence that made his heart ache with love so fierce it sometimes scared him. Evan pulled the plug, watching the dirty water spiral down the drain, taking with it the food particles and soap bubbles, and hopefully, some of his stress. The week had been a special kind of hell, the kind that had Clara Vaughn's fingerprints all over it. Monday, she'd torn apart his quarterly report in front of the entire team, her voice sharp enough to cut glass as she'd pointed out elementary errors that weren't errors at all, just formatting choices she personally disliked. Tuesday, she'd made him cancel his lunch with Mia at her school, the one day a month parents were invited, because a client needed a presentation revised again, and then ultimately decided to go with the original version anyway. Wednesday through Friday had been a blur of impossible deadlines, late nights at the office while his neighbor Mrs. Chen watched Mia, and the constant gnawing guilt that came with being a single father who could never quite be in 2 places at once. Clara Vaughn. Even her name felt sharp in his mind, like saying it aloud might summon her the way speaking of the devil supposedly did. She was 42, brilliant in that terrifying way that made grown men stutter during board meetings, and completely, utterly devoid of what most people would call human warmth. In the 3 years Evan had worked as her senior analyst at Meridian Financial Group, he'd never seen her smile. Not really. There were these tight-lipped expressions she made when a deal closed, something that might technically qualify as a smile in the same way a shark's open mouth might, but nothing genuine. Nothing that reached her eyes, which were the color of winter slate and just as cold. The worst part was that she was good at her job. Exceptional, actually. Clara could spot a bad investment from a mile away, could negotiate terms that left opposing counsel wondering what had just happened, could predict market shifts with almost supernatural accuracy. The company's profit margins had grown 37% since she'd taken over as vice president of acquisitions. Evan knew this because he'd compiled the report, spent 3 sleepless nights making sure every figure was accurate, every projection reasonable. Clara had glanced at it for roughly 45 seconds before saying, "Adequate. Don't expect praise for doing your job, Parker." He dried his hands on a dish towel that Mia had decorated with fabric markers last Mother's Day, the holiday they pretended didn't hurt, and made his way to the living room. His daughter was already nestled into the corner of their second-hand couch, wrapped in the purple blanket her grandmother had knitted before she passed. The princess book, Princess Practical and the Dragon's Gold, lay open on her lap, though Evan knew she couldn't read most of the words yet. She just liked looking at the illustrations, at the armor-clad princess who solved problems with her brain instead of waiting for rescue. "All right, kiddo," he said, settling beside her and pulling her against his side. "Let's see what Princess Practical is up to tonight." He was 4 pages in, doing his best impression of the pompous dragon, which always made Mia giggle, when his phone began to vibrate on the coffee table. The screen lit up with a name that made his stomach clench. Vaughn. Evan's first instinct was to ignore it. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Friday. He'd left the office at 6, early by Clara's standards, an act of rebellion he'd had to explicitly clear with her that morning. "My daughter has a half day," he'd explained, standing in her doorway like a student before a principal. "I need to pick her up at noon." Clara had looked up from her computer screen, those cold eyes assessing him with all the warmth of a tax audit, and said, "Fine, but I want the Morrison file preliminary analysis on my desk by end of business." It had taken him until 5:47 p.m., fingers flying across his keyboard, while Mia did homework at the small table in his office that everyone pretended not to see. The phone stopped vibrating. Mia looked up at him, her brown eyes, so much like her mother's that sometimes it hurt to meet them, questioning. "Is it your boss?" "Yeah, but it's okay. It's Friday night. Whatever it is can wait until Monday." He turned back to the book. But he'd barely read another sentence when the phone erupted again. "Va." His jaw tightened. Mia's small hand found his, squeezing gently. "You can answer it, Daddy. I know she's mean to you." "She's not mean," Evan lied automatically, the same lie he'd been telling himself for 3 years. "She's just very focused on work." "That's what mean people say when they know they're being mean," Mia countered, with devastating 7-year-old wisdom. The phone went silent again. Evan exhaled slowly, relief and annoyance mixing in equal measure. They made it through another 2 pages. Princess Practical had just outsmarted the dragon by pointing out that hoarding gold was actually a poor investment strategy given inflation, when the phone buzzed a 3rd time. This time it wasn't a call, it was a text message. Then another in rapid succession, like machine gun fire. "Vaughn. Pick up. Vaughn. Parker. I need. Vaughn. Please." That last word stopped him cold. In 3 years, he'd never heard Clara Vaughn say please. Not once. She gave orders, made demands, occasionally acknowledged acceptable performance with a curt nod, but please was not in her vocabulary. It was like discovering that sharks could suddenly speak French. His thumb hovered over the screen, torn between his daughter curled warm against his side and the impossible word glowing up at him. Another message appeared. "Vaughn. Please help. I'm in trouble." "Shit," he whispered, then immediately winced. "Sorry, Mia. Don't say that word." "I know all the bad words, Daddy. Tyler Bronson says them on the playground." "Well, Tyler Bronson's parents are going to get a phone call from Ms. Rodriguez," Evan muttered, already reaching for his phone. His hands felt numb as he unlocked the screen, staring at those 4 words. "Please help. I'm in trouble." What kind of trouble could Clara Vaughn possibly be in? The woman who wielded power like a sword, who made senior partners nervous, who'd once made a opposing lawyer cry during a deposition. His mind raced through possibilities. A mugging, a car accident, some kind of medical emergency. Or maybe, and this thought made his stomach drop, maybe this was some kind of test, some bizarre loyalty experiment she'd cooked up to see if he'd actually respond to personal requests. It seemed like exactly the kind of manipulation she'd engage in. But that please, that desperate lowercase please that looked so foreign coming from her number. "Daddy," Mia's voice pulled him back. "Is everything okay?" "No," he wanted to say. "Nothing about this is okay. Your father is about to do something incredibly stupid because his horrible boss, the same person who made him miss your school concert last month, sent a text message that might be genuine or might be a trap. Instead, he kissed the top of her head and stood up. "I need to make a quick phone call, sweetheart. Keep your spot in the book, okay?" He walked to his bedroom, closing the door softly behind him. The rain had intensified, creating a white noise backdrop as he stared at his phone. His thumb hovered over Clara's number. 3 years of criticisms echoed in his head. "This analysis is sloppy, Parker. I expected better from someone with your supposed credentials. Your personal life is not my concern. Make it work." That last one she'd said when he'd asked to leave early for Mia's birthday party, a request she'd ultimately denied. Every rational cell in his brain screamed at him to ignore this. To put his daughter to bed, pour himself the beer he'd been fantasizing about all week, and let Clara Vaughn handle her own problems for once. She'd never shown him an ounce of compassion. Why should he show her any? But then he thought about those 4 words again. The pleading, the vulnerability. And beneath all his resentment and exhaustion, there was something else. The stubborn, idiotic part of himself that believed everyone deserved help when they asked for it, even dragons. Evan pressed the call button. It rang once, twice. On the 3rd ring, someone picked up, but it wasn't Clara's voice. It was male, older, irritated. Yeah? I'm looking for Clara Vaughn, Evan said, his confusion sharpening into concern. She texted me from this number. Oh, you're the emergency contact? The man's voice dripped with exasperation. About time. Look, I'm Mike. I'm the manager here at the Copper Still on 5th. Your friend is plastered, refusing to give up her car keys, and I'm about 3 seconds away from calling her a cab and banning her from the premises. The world tilted slightly. Clara Vaughn, drunk, at a bar called the Copper Still. It didn't compute. Clara, who drank exactly 1 glass of wine at company functions and nursed it all night. Clara, who was always in control, always 3 moves ahead, always perfectly, infuriatingly composed. Is she okay? Is she hurt? Only thing hurt is her dignity and my patience, Mike said. She's been here since 4 o'clock, crying into her whiskey and scaring off my other customers. I've tried to call her a ride 3 times, but she keeps saying she's fine and demanding another drink. I cut her off an hour ago and she's been arguing with me ever since. You coming to get her or not? Evan's mind was already moving, calculating. The Copper Still was downtown, a 40-minute drive in good traffic, maybe 30 in the rain if he pushed it. Mrs. Chen, his neighbor, had mentioned she was staying in tonight. Mia was already in her pajamas, practically falling asleep. I'll be there in 30 minutes, he heard himself say. Don't let her drive. Don't let her leave. Buddy, I wouldn't let her behind the wheel of a shopping cart right now. Just get here before she starts throwing things. She's got an arm. I'll give her that. The line went dead. Evan stood in his bedroom, phone still pressed to his ear, wondering what alternate universe he'd just stepped into. Then training and instinct kicked in, the same automatic response system that had activated when Mia's mother had died, when life had fallen apart and he'd had to simply move forward because stopping meant drowning. He opened his door to find Mia standing right outside, still clutching her book. You have to go get her, don't you? Sometimes his daughter's perceptiveness was a blessing. Sometimes it felt like a tiny mirror reflecting all his failures back at him. Yeah, kiddo, I do. He knelt down to her level, hands on her small shoulders. I'm so sorry. I know this is our night, but she needs help, Mia finished for him. That's what you always say. When people need help, we help them, even when it's hard. Guilt and pride warred in his chest. I'm raising you too well, he said, pulling her into a hug. You're going to have a terrible time in the real world with that kind of compassion. You help people, and you're doing okay, she said into his shoulder. If only she knew how many times he felt like he was barely holding it together. Come on, we need to call Mrs. Chen. 10 minutes later, Mrs. Chen, who was 73 and had infinite patience for children but none for nonsense, was settled on the couch with Mia and a promise to stay until Evan returned. Take your time, she said, though her eyes held questions he didn't have answers for. And drive carefully. Roads are bad tonight. Evan grabbed his keys and wallet, pulled on a jacket that had seen better days, and paused at the door. Mia was already showing Mrs. Chen her princess book, but she looked up long enough to say, Be nice to her, Daddy. Maybe she's having a bad day. Maybe, he agreed, though bad day seemed like a dramatic understatement for whatever had reduced Clara Vaughn to a drunk mess at a downtown bar. The drive was exactly as miserable as he'd expected. Rain hammered his windshield, the wipers working overtime and still barely keeping up. Traffic was light but treacherous, every intersection a potential skating rink. Evan's mind churned the entire way, alternating between concern and resentment, worry and anger. What was he doing? Driving across the city in a storm to rescue the woman who'd made his professional life hell? The same person who'd shot down his raise request 3 months ago, despite his consistent performance? Who'd called him into her office just last week to criticize his lack of dedication when he'd asked to leave early for a parent-teacher conference? But then he'd remember that message. Please help, I'm in trouble. And he'd press a little harder on the gas. The copper still turned out to be exactly the kind of place he'd expect Clara to never, ever set foot in. A dive bar with a flickering neon sign, grimy windows, and the general atmosphere of poor decisions and cheaper whiskey. A few patrons huddled under the awning, smoking cigarettes and eyeing the rain with resignation. Evan parked in the lot, miraculously finding a spot near the entrance, and sat for a moment in his car, engine still running, rain drumming on the roof. Last chance to turn back, a voice in his head whispered. Last chance to let Clara Vaughn handle her own disasters. Call her an Uber, text the bartender the confirmation code, and go home to your daughter. But his hand was already reaching for the door handle. The bar's interior was dim and sticky, smelling of old beer and desperation. A jukebox in the corner played something mournful and country. The Friday night crowd was sparse, a few old-timers nursing beers at the far end, a couple arguing in hushed tones at a corner booth, and at the bar itself, slumped over like a puppet with cut strings, was Clara Vaughn. Evan almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the severe bun, the perfect posture, the armor of designer suits and intimidation. Her dark hair hung loose and wild around her shoulders. Her white blouse was untucked and wrinkled, and she was, God help him, arguing with the bartender over a set of car keys dangling from his meaty fist. I'm perfectly capable of driving, she was saying, her words sliding into each other like ice cubes in a glass. I'm a professional. I close deals worth millions. I can certainly handle a vehicle. Lady, you can't even handle sitting on that stool without wobbling, the bartender, presumably Mike, shot back. He was a big guy, probably mid-50s, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen every variety of human disaster. I already told you your friend is on his way. I don't have friends, Clara said, and the raw honesty in that slurred statement hit Evan harder than it should have. I have colleagues, subordinates, adversaries, but not friends. Well, somebody's coming for you, and you're not leaving until they get here. That's when Clara spotted him. Her head turned, unfocused eyes trying to locate the source of the draft from the open door, and when she finally found him standing there, dripping rainwater onto the floor, something complicated flickered across her face. Surprise, shame, relief, anger, all of it tangled together. Parker. His name was an accusation and a question. What are you doing here? You texted me, he said, moving closer but keeping his distance, like approaching a wounded animal. You said you needed help. I did? She blinked slowly, processing, then looked down at her phone lying face up on the bar, screen cracked. Oh, I suppose I did. She laughed, a bitter sound that didn't belong to the Clara Vaughn he knew. How pathetic. Drunk texting my employee, that's a new low, even for me. Mike caught Evan's eye and jerked his head toward Clara in a universal gesture of, please get her out of my bar. Evan moved closer, sliding onto the stool next to her, keeping a respectful distance but close enough to intervene if she tried to bolt. Clara, he said softly, using her first name for what might have been the first time in 3 years. Let me take you home. Home, she repeated, staring into her empty glass like it held answers. Home. What a lovely concept, a place, a feeling. I have an apartment, 1,200 square feet of designer furniture and crushing silence. Is that home? Evan exchanged another look with Mike, who just shrugged. Your problem now, buddy. Your apartment, then. Let me drive you to your apartment. Why? Clara turned to face him fully, and up close he could see the devastation in her eyes, red-rimmed, makeup smeared, filled with a pain so raw it made him want to look away. Why would you help me? I've been horrible to you. Horrible. I know exactly how horrible I've been. We can talk about that later. Right now, let's just get you somewhere safe. Safe? She laughed again, that same broken sound. Nothing's safe. Everything ends. Everyone leaves. It all just ends. Her hand shot out suddenly, gripping his forearm with surprising strength. Did you know that? Did you know everything ends? I know, Evan said quietly, thinking of Mia's mother, of the car accident that had shattered his world 5 years ago. Trust me, I know. Something in his tone must have registered, even through the alcohol fog, because Clara's grip loosened. Of course you do. You're a widower. I read your file when HR sent it up. Single father, wife deceased, may need flexible scheduling. As if loss could be reduced to a bullet point in a personnel folder. The casual mention of his most painful chapter made Evan's jaw tighten, but he pushed down the anger. Now wasn't the time. My car's right outside. Let me take you home. We'll get your car towed here tomorrow, and you can pick it up when I'm sober, when I'm myself again. She waved a hand dismissively, nearly losing her balance on the stool. What if this is myself? What if the cold bitch you all hate is just the costume I wear, and this... She gestured at herself, at the mess she'd become. Is the truth. Then the truth needs a ride home, Evan said firmly. He stood and gently took her arm. Come on. You can philosophize about identity in the car. For a moment he thought she might resist. Her body tensed, pride and stubbornness fighting against common sense and inebriation. But then she deflated, all the fight going out of her at once. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Mike handed over Clara's purse and car keys, a Mercedes fob that probably cost more than Evan's monthly rent. Good luck, man, he said, with the tone of someone who did not envy Evan's position. And maybe next time, take away her phone before she starts texting people. Next time I won't need to text anyone, Clara mumbled as Evan guided her off the stool. Next time I'll just disappear completely. Cleaner that way. The casual mention of disappearing sent alarm bells ringing in Evan's head, but he filed it away for later. Right now he just needed to get her to his car without her falling or fleeing. They made it 3 steps before Clara stumbled, her heel catching on the uneven floor. Evan caught her, his arm around her waist, and felt how thin she was beneath the expensive clothes. When was the last time she'd eaten a real meal? I've got you, he said. Just lean on me. Well, that's what everyone says right before they let you fall, Clara murmured, but she leaned against him anyway. The rain had lightened to a steady drizzle as they emerged from the bar. The smokers under the awning watched with the detached interest of people who'd seen similar scenes play out 100 times. Evan held Clara steady with one arm while fishing his keys out with the other, clicking the unlock button for his aging Honda Civic, which looked especially pathetic parked next to what was presumably Clara's Mercedes several spaces down. Your chariot awaits, he said with forced lightness, opening the passenger door. Clara stared at the car like it was a particularly difficult puzzle. This is your vehicle. Yep. She's not much, but she runs. I pay you how much annually? Not enough, apparently, Evan said, and was rewarded with the ghost of a smile. Getting Clara into the passenger seat was like maneuvering a very expensive, very drunk marionette. She kept trying to help and only succeeded in making things harder, her limbs not quite responding to her commands. Finally, he got her settled, pulled the seatbelt across her chest, and paused. Up close, with the car's interior light illuminating her face, he could see the full extent of the devastation. This wasn't just drunk. This was broken. Clara, he said gently, where do you live? She rattled off an address in Riverview Heights. Of course she lived in Riverview Heights, where a studio apartment cost more than most people's annual salary. Evan closed her door, walked around to the driver's side, and slid behind the wheel. The car smelled like the vanilla air freshener Mia had picked out, and Clara's perfume, something expensive that probably had a French name. They'd been driving for maybe 5 minutes, Clara silent and staring out the window at the rain-blurred city lights, when she suddenly spoke. Do you know what today is? Friday, Evan offered. October 15th. Her voice was hollow. 23 years ago today, my mother died. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. I was 19. Sophomore in college, double majoring in business and economics, already planning to conquer the world. And then she was just gone, erased. Like she'd never existed at all. Evan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He didn't know what to say. Sorry for your loss felt inadequate. I understand felt presumptuous, so he just drove and let her talk. I was her only child. Dad left when I was 3. couldn't handle the responsibility, the commitment, so it was just us. She worked 2 jobs to put me through school, told me I could be anything I wanted, pushed me to be strong, to never depend on anyone, to never let the world see weakness. Clara laughed bitterly. She'd be so disappointed to see me now. Her daughter, the success story, drunk in a dive bar on the anniversary of her death.
I don't think she'd be disappointed, Evan said quietly. I think she'd be worried. There's a difference. You didn't know her. No, but I know grief. And I know it doesn't care about strength or success or any of the armor we build. It just hits, usually when we're least prepared for it. Clara turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face in the darkness. Your wife. How long has it been? 5 years, car accident, drunk driver ran a red light. The words came easier now after years of practice. Mia was 2, doesn't really remember her, which is its own kind of tragedy. And you're raising her alone. Yeah. That's why you're always leaving early, why you need flexible scheduling, why you couldn't stay late Tuesday when I made you cancel your lunch with her. Understanding was creeping into Clara's voice, along with something that might have been shame. I knew about your daughter. It's in your file, but I didn't think about what that meant.
What you were juggling. Most people don't, Evan said, and tried to keep the bitterness out of his voice. They drove in silence for a few more minutes. Evan navigated the slick streets, windshield wipers keeping rhythm with his thoughts. This was surreal. Sitting here with Clara Vaughn, his tormentor, his boss, the person who'd made him consider quitting on more than one occasion, having an actual human conversation, seeing her as something other than the ice queen in the corner office. I've been cruel to you, Clara said suddenly, her voice small. Haven't I? Evan considered lying, considered the careful political answer that would protect his job, his livelihood, his daughter's security. But maybe it was the late hour, or the rain, or the fact that Clara was already so far past her own walls that honesty felt like the only appropriate response. Yeah, he said. You have. Why? She turned to him again. Why did I do that? Why did I single you out? I don't know, Clara. You tell me. She was quiet for so long that he thought she might have fallen asleep, but then, in a voice barely above a whisper, because you have what I lost. A reason to go home. Someone waiting for you. Love that makes the struggle worthwhile. Her breath hitched. Every time I saw you checking your phone for messages from your daughter, every time you had to leave for a school event, every time you chose her over work, I hated you for it. Hated that you got to have that when my mother was taken from me. When I've been alone for so long, I've forgotten what it feels like to be anything else. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and painful. Evan's throat felt tight. That's not fair, he said quietly, punishing me for having what you lost. I know, God, I know. Nothing about it is fair. Nothing about any of this is fair. Clara pressed her hands to her face. I've become exactly what my mother warned me not to be. So obsessed with success that I forgot how to be human. And now I'm 42, alone, drunk in my employee's car on the anniversary of her death, and I can't even remember the last time someone touched me with kindness. They were pulling into the parking garage of her building now, all glass and steel and intimidating modernity. Evan found a visitor spot and killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the patter of rain on the concrete above them. Clara, he said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. When you said earlier that you'd disappear completely, did you mean... No. She cut him off quickly. No, I'm not. I wouldn't... I'm just tired, Parker. So tired of being alone, of being the villain in everyone's story, including my own. Evan released a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Okay, good. Because despite everything, I wouldn't want... He stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. Wouldn't want what? I wouldn't want anything to happen to you, he said simply. You're difficult, and you've made my life harder than it needs to be, but I wouldn't want you to hurt yourself. Clara stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. Even after everything I've done to you, even knowing how I've treated you? Everyone deserves a second chance, Evan said, and meant it.
Sometimes we just need someone to believe we're worth saving. Something cracked in Clara's expression, some final wall crumbling. Tears spilled down her cheeks, mixing with the remnants of her smeared mascara. I don't deserve your kindness, she whispered. Maybe not, Evan agreed. But I'm giving it to you anyway. Come on, let's get you upstairs. Getting Clara from the car to her apartment was another challenge in coordination and patience. She was a bit more steady on her feet now, the fresh air and the conversation seeming to have sobered her slightly, but she still needed his support. They took the elevator to the 14th floor. She lived in 14C, naturally one of the penthouse units. The hallway was all plush carpet and muted lighting, the kind of building where you could go weeks without seeing your neighbors. Clara fumbled with her keys, dropping them twice before Evan gently took them from her shaking hands and unlocked the door himself. The apartment beyond was exactly what he'd expected, immaculate, expensive, and utterly devoid of personality. Everything was in shades of white, gray, and chrome. Modern art that matched the color scheme hung on the walls. The furniture looked like it belonged in a catalog, positioned just so. There wasn't a single photograph, not a throw pillow out of place, not a hint that an actual human being lived here. It looked like a mausoleum. Welcome to my home, Clara said with dark humor, spreading her arms wide and nearly toppling over. All the warmth and comfort of a surgical suite. Evan steadied her with a hand on her arm. Where's your bedroom? Down the hall, second door on the right. She let him guide her in that direction, her steps uncertain. You must think I'm pathetic. The great Clara Vaughn, reduced to this. I think you're human, Evan said, maybe for the first time since I've known you. Her bedroom was marginally more personal than the rest of the apartment. There was at least color here. A deep navy duvet on the king-size bed, a reading chair by the window, a bookshelf packed with titles ranging from financial theory to, surprisingly, poetry. Evan got Clara seated on the edge of her bed and knelt down to help her with her shoes, expensive heels that looked beautiful and painful in equal measure. I can do it, she protested weakly, but didn't actually stop him. I know you can, Evan said, sliding off the first shoe, then the second. But you don't have to do everything alone, Clara. That's not strength, that's just lonely. She looked down at him, this man who'd driven across the city in a storm, to help the person who'd made his life miserable, who was now kneeling at her feet removing her shoes with a gentleness she hadn't experienced in years. Why are you doing this? She asked, and the question held a lifetime of confusion. Why are you helping me? Evan stood up, meeting her eyes. Because everyone deserves a second chance, he repeated, and because maybe, just maybe, you needed someone to see past the dragon to the person underneath. Clara's face crumpled. She reached out, grabbing his hand with both of hers. I'm sorry, she choked out. I'm so sorry for how I've treated you, for every missed event with your daughter, every unnecessary criticism, every moment I made you feel small. You didn't deserve any of it. No, Evan agreed quietly. I didn't, but I accept your apology. He pulled back the covers on her bed, helped her lie down, and tucked the duvet around her shoulders. She looked small like this, vulnerable, nothing like the formidable force she was in the office. Just a woman who'd lost her mother 23 years ago and never quite figured out how to fill that void. Stay, Clara whispered as he turned to leave. Just for a few minutes. I don't want to be alone right now. Evan hesitated. Every professional instinct screamed that this was inappropriate, that he should leave immediately, that being in his drunk boss's bedroom at midnight was a recipe for disaster. But then he looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd been alone for far too long, someone who'd built walls so high she'd forgotten how to let people in, someone who tonight had finally asked for help. He pulled the reading chair over next to the bed and sat down. A few minutes, he said. Then I need to get home to Mia. Mia? Clara murmured, her eyes already drifting closed. Pretty name. You're a good father, Parker, I can tell. The way you talk about her, the way you fight for her, even when I make it hard. Her words were slurring again, sleep pulling her under. I hope she knows how lucky she is to have someone who chooses her, every time. I'll tell her you said that, Evan said softly, watching as Clara's breathing deepened, her face finally relaxing.
He sat there for 20 minutes, making sure she was truly asleep, not in any danger of being sick or worse. The apartment was silent except for the rain against the windows and Clara's steady breathing. He found himself studying her face in the dim light from the hallway, the lines around her eyes that spoke of stress and long nights, the elegant bone structure, the way her hair fanned across the pillow. She looked younger like this, less formidable, almost peaceful. Before he left, Evan found a glass in her kitchen and filled it with water, leaving it on her nightstand along with a bottle of aspirin from her medicine cabinet. He scrawled a quick note on a sticky pad. "Drink water, take medicine, call if you need anything. Evan." Then he let himself out, locking the door behind him with the spare key from her keyring and sliding it under the door. The drive home felt longer somehow, the rain picking up again, his mind replaying the entire surreal evening. He kept hearing Clara's words. "I've been cruel to you. Why did I do that?" And her answer, "Because you have what I lost." It was almost 1 a.m. when he finally pulled into his apartment complex. Mrs. Chen was dozing on his couch, waking with a start when he came in. "Everything okay?" she asked, gathering her things. "Yeah," Evan said, pulling out his wallet to pay her for the late hours. "Everything's complicated, but okay." "The girl who needed help, she all right?" Evan thought about Clara in her cold apartment, finally sleeping after years of holding herself together through sheer force of will. "She will be," he said. "I think she just needed someone to see her." "You're a good man, Evan Parker," Mrs. Chen said, patting his arm. "Too good for this world sometimes." After she left, Evan checked on Mia, fast asleep, her princess book fallen open across her chest. He carefully removed it, tucked her covers up to her chin, and kissed her forehead. "I love you, kiddo," he whispered. "More than anything." He collapsed into his own bed fully clothed, too exhausted to even change. His last thought before sleep claimed him was of Clara's question. "Do you think people can really change?" He didn't know, but tomorrow, or rather later today, would be Monday. And Monday meant returning to the office, to the real world, where dragons wore business suits and vulnerability was a liability. What he didn't know, as he drifted off to sleep, was that Clara Vaughn was lying awake in her own bed, staring at the ceiling, the fog of alcohol finally lifting enough for the full horror of the evening to sink in. She remembered everything, every word, every tear, every confession. She remembered the kindness in Evan Parker's eyes when he'd said everyone deserves a second chance. She remembered the gentle way he'd removed her shoes, tucked her in, stayed until she fell asleep. And she remembered, most of all, what she'd become. The cruelty she'd wielded, the loneliness she'd chosen, the walls she'd built so high she'd forgotten there was a world beyond them. Clara reached for her phone on the nightstand, seeing the cracked screen for the first time. Evidence of her desperate texting, of her breakdown, of the moment she'd finally admitted she couldn't do it alone anymore. Part of her wanted to call him right now, to apologize again, to promise things would be different. But it was 1 a.m, and he'd already given up his entire evening for her. She'd already taken enough. Instead, she opened her calendar and did something she'd never done in 23 years. She blocked off the next Monday. Not for a meeting or a deal, just marked it. Make things right. She didn't know if she could change. Didn't know if people like her, people who'd forgotten how to be soft, could learn again. But Evan Parker had driven across the city in a storm for her, had seen her at her absolute worst and still treated her with dignity, had said she was worth saving. The least she could do was try. Outside both their windows, the rain finally stopped. The storm had passed, but neither of them knew yet that this was just the beginning, that Friday night in a dive bar would be the earthquake that cracked both their carefully constructed worlds wide open. That Monday morning would bring coffee and awkward smiles and the first tentative steps toward something neither of them had thought possible. Second chances, Evan had said. Everyone deserves a second chance. Clara Vaughn closed her eyes and for the first time in 23 years, let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, he was right. The weekend passed in a haze of normalcy that felt anything but normal. Evan took Mia to the park on Saturday, where she chased pigeons and demanded he push her on the swings until his arms ached. They made pancakes on Sunday morning, chocolate chip, her favorite.
and spent the afternoon building a blanket fort in the living room while rain continued its intermittent assault on the windows. On the surface, everything was exactly as it should be. But beneath it all, Evan's mind kept circling back to Friday night like a moth to a flame. He replayed the evening in fragments, Clara's broken confession in his car, the way she'd looked so small in that enormous bed, her whispered apology that had sounded like it cost her everything to say. He wondered if she remembered, wondered if Monday would bring acknowledgement or denial, wondered if showing up to work would mean facing the dragon again or something else entirely. Sunday night, after Mia was asleep, he'd sat at his laptop and stared at a blank email addressed to Clara. He typed and deleted a dozen different messages. Hope you're feeling better. Too casual. We should talk about Friday. Too confrontational. Just checking in. Too familiar. In the end, he'd closed the laptop without sending anything. Whatever happened next needed to happen face to face, in the harsh fluorescent light of the office where their actual relationship existed. Monday morning arrived with cruel punctuality. Evan's alarm went off at 6:15, the same as every weekday, pulling him from dreams he couldn't quite remember, but that left him feeling unsettled. He went through his morning routine on autopilot. Shower, shave, wake Mia, make breakfast, pack her lunch, check her homework folder, navigate the familiar dance of getting a 7-year-old ready for school while simultaneously preparing himself for whatever awaited him at the office. "You're quiet today, Daddy," Mia observed over her bowl of cereal, her big brown eyes studying him with that unnerving perceptiveness she'd inherited from her mother. "Just thinking about work stuff, kiddo," Evan said, which wasn't a lie but wasn't the whole truth either. "Is it about the dragon lady?" Mia asked. "Is she still mean?" "I don't know yet," Evan admitted, pouring himself a second cup of coffee he probably didn't need but definitely wanted. "Maybe she won't be as mean anymore. People can change." "That's what you said about my broccoli," Mia pointed out, "but I still hate it." Despite everything, Evan laughed. "Fair point, but let's hope people are more adaptable than vegetables." He dropped Mia at school. She kissed his cheek and told him to have a good day, which made his chest tight with love, and then sat in his car in the parking lot, staring at the steering wheel and trying to psych himself up for whatever came next. The office building loomed in the distance, all glass and steel and corporate ambition. Somewhere on the 14th floor, Clara Vaughn was probably already at her desk, because she was always the first one in and the last one out. The question was, which Clara would he be facing? Evan arrived at the office at 8:40, which was actually 10 minutes earlier than usual. The morning was already in full swing, phones ringing, keyboards clattering, the smell of too strong coffee from the break room mixing with someone's overly enthusiastic cologne. He nodded at colleagues, accepted a morning Parker from Jenkins in accounting, and made his way to his cubicle in the acquisitions department. His desk looked exactly as he'd left it Friday evening. Organized chaos, 3 monitors displaying spreadsheets and financial models, a framed photo of Mia from last Christmas wearing a Santa hat and a gap-toothed grin. He set down his messenger bag, logged into his computer, and tried to focus on the Morrison file that was supposedly due today, even though he'd finished it Friday, and Clara knew it. 15 minutes passed, then 30. Evan kept glancing toward the hallway that led to Clara's corner office, expecting her to emerge at any moment with some impossible demand or scathing critique. But the hallway remained empty, her door remained closed, and the only sound was the ambient noise of an office coming to life. At 9:15, his phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Staff meeting, 9:30, conference room B. Evan's stomach dropped. Monday morning staff meetings were Clara's specialty, an hour of her dissecting the previous week's performance, pointing out flaws, and setting expectations that bordered on inhuman. He'd sat through dozens of them, watched colleagues wilt under her sharp tongue, learned to keep his head down, and his responses brief. He gathered his laptop and notepad, steeled himself, and headed to conference room B. The others were already filing in. Marcus from legal, Jennifer and Tom from analysis, Sarah who handled client relations. Everyone wore the same expression, resignation mixed with low-level dread. They took their usual seats around the long table, leaving the head seat empty for Clara. 9:30 came and went. Clara's chair remained vacant. People exchanged confused glances. Clara was never late.
She'd once held a meeting from her hospital bed after an appendectomy, video calling in with an IV still attached to her arm. Her punctuality was as reliable as the sunrise. At 9:35, the door opened. Everyone's posture straightened automatically, Pavlovian response to the dragon's arrival. But when Clara walked in, Evan nearly didn't recognize her. She was wearing a suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, professional, but something was different. Her hair, usually pulled back in that severe bun, was softer somehow, styled in a way that framed her face instead of pulling it back. She wasn't wearing her usual armor of heavy makeup. Instead, her face looked almost bare, natural. And most striking of all, as she approached the table, she was carrying a cardboard tray with coffee cups. "Good morning, everyone," Clara said, and her voice was different too. Not the sharp blade they were used to, but something almost warm. "I apologize for being late. I stopped to pick these up." She began distributing the coffee cups, actually reading the names written on the sides. Marcus, black; Jennifer, vanilla latte; Tom, Americano; Sarah, chai tea latte. The room had gone completely silent, everyone too stunned to speak. Clara Vaughn was serving them coffee. The woman who once told an intern that she wasn't paid to be a waitress when asked to pass the sugar during a meeting was now personally delivering beverages. Then she stopped in front of Evan. Their eyes met, and he saw something in hers. Nervousness, perhaps, or determination, or maybe just the fragile hope of someone trying very hard to be different. "Parker," she said softly, and held out a cup. "Black, 1 sugar." He took it automatically, their fingers brushing briefly. The coffee was still hot from that expensive place 3 blocks away where a single cup cost more than his entire lunch budget. "Thank you," he managed, and saw something in her face relax just slightly. Clara took her seat at the head of the table and opened her laptop, but then immediately closed it again. "Before we get to the agenda," she said, and Evan could see her hands clasped tightly in front of her, knuckles white. "I want to say something. I've been thinking a lot this weekend about leadership and what it means to be effective versus what it means to be good. And I've realized that I've been failing at the latter. You could have heard a pin drop. Marcus's mouth was literally hanging open. Jennifer had stopped mid-sip of her latte. "I've pushed all of you too hard," Clara continued, and her voice was steady, but Evan could hear the effort it took. "I've prioritized results over people, efficiency over humanity. I've made demands without considering the cost, and I want to apologize for that." She looked around the table, making eye contact with each person. "You're all exceptionally talented at what you do, and you deserve to be treated with respect and appreciation, not just criticism." "Is this a prank?" Tom whispered to Jennifer, who shushed him immediately. "I know that words are easy, and actions are what matter," Clara said. "So here's what's changing, effective immediately. First, no more mandatory weekend work unless there's a genuine emergency, and client inconvenience doesn't qualify as an emergency. Second, I'm implementing a strict policy about work-life balance. If you need to leave early for family obligations, school events, doctor's appointments, whatever, you tell me and you go. No explanations required, no guilt trips." She paused, and Evan saw her gaze land on him specifically. "Third, I'll be conducting individual meetings with each of you over the next 2 weeks to discuss your career goals, concerns, and how I can better support your professional development." Sarah raised a tentative hand. "What brought this on, if you don't mind me asking?" Clara was quiet for a moment, her jaw working like she was choosing her words carefully. "Let's just say I had a wake-up call this weekend. Someone reminded me that being strong doesn't mean being cruel, and that leadership without compassion is just tyranny." Again, her eyes found Evan's. "I'm not promising I'll be perfect at this. I've spent a lot of years being one way, and change is difficult, but I'm asking for your patience as I try to do better." The meeting continued, but it was nothing like any Monday meeting they'd experienced before. Clara asked for input instead of issuing orders. She acknowledged good work, actually said thank you and well done multiple times. When Jennifer mentioned a problem with a client deadline, instead of immediately criticizing, Clara asked, "What do you need from me to make this work?" It was like watching someone learn a new language in real time, occasionally stumbling but genuinely trying. As everyone filed out after the meeting concluded, Clara's voice stopped Evan at the door. "Parker, Could you stay for a moment? His colleagues gave him sympathetic looks as they left, old instincts dying hard, assuming he was about to be reprimanded. The door clicked shut, leaving them alone in the conference room. The morning sun streamed through the windows, painting geometric patterns across the table where Clara still sat, her untouched coffee in front of her. "Close the door," she said quietly. Evan did, then remained standing, unsure of the protocol for this unprecedented situation. Clara stood as well, and he could see she was nervous. Actually nervous. Her hands moved to her sides, then to the back of the chair, then finally clasped in front of her like she didn't know what to do with them. "I remember everything," she said without preamble. "Friday night, the bar, what I said in your car, all of it." She took a breath. "And I meant everything I said, the apology, the admission of cruelty, all of it. I know I was drunk, and I know that's not an excuse, but it did make me honest in a way I haven't been in years." "Okay," Evan said, because he didn't know what else to say. "I've been thinking about what you said, about second chances, about everyone deserving to be saved." Clara's voice was getting softer, more vulnerable. "I don't know if I deserve that, Parker. I've been horrible to you, systematically, deliberately horrible. I used you as a punching bag for my own failures and pain. That's not something a simple apology can fix." "No," Evan agreed. "It's not." She flinched slightly, but nodded. "You're right. So I want to show you I'm serious. I want to make amends, not just with words, but with actions." She moved to the side table and picked up a manila folder he hadn't noticed before. "This is your promotion packet. Senior Acquisitions Manager, 23% salary increase, full benefits package, and most importantly, flexible scheduling with remote work options 2 days a week." Evan's heart stopped. He'd applied for a promotion 6 months ago and been rejected by Clara herself, who told him he lacked the necessary dedication, and now she was handing it to him like it was always meant to be his? "This is what you earned," Clara continued, holding out the folder. "What you should have received months ago. I blocked it because I was petty and cruel and punishing you for having what I'd lost. That was wrong. You're one of the best analysts in this company, and you've been doing management-level work for years without the title or compensation. This corrects that." Evan took the folder with hands that weren't quite steady. He opened it, saw the official letterhead, the salary figure that was significantly higher than he'd even hoped for, the job description that actually reflected what he'd been doing for the past 2 years. "Clara, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept it," she said. "Say you'll give me a chance to prove that Friday night wasn't just drunken sentimentality, that I can actually be better." He looked up from the folder to find her watching him with an intensity that made his breath catch. This close, in the morning light, he could see the shadows under her eyes that even her minimal makeup couldn't quite hide. She hadn't slept well. Neither had he. "I need to ask you something first," Evan said. "Is this about guilt, or is this about actual change?" "Both," Clara answered immediately, and he respected her honesty. "I feel guilty as hell about how I've treated you, but it's more than that. Friday night, sitting in your car, watching you drive me home even though I'd given you every reason not to. I realized I'd become someone I didn't recognize, someone my mother would be ashamed of. And I don't want to be that person anymore." "Change is hard," Evan said carefully, "especially patterns we've built over years. There are going to be times when you slip back into old habits." "I know," Clara said, "and when that happens, I need you to call me on it, to tell me when I'm being unreasonable or cruel. I'm asking you to hold me accountable." She managed a small, self-deprecating smile. "Consider it part of your new management responsibilities." Despite everything, Evan felt his own lips twitch. "That's a dangerous amount of power you're giving me. You've earned it. Hell, you've probably earned the right to quit and find a boss who isn't a disaster of a human being. But I'm hoping—" She paused, vulnerability cracking through again. "I'm hoping you'll stay. Give me a chance to make this right." Evan thought about Mia, about the financial security this promotion would bring, about actually being able to save money and maybe take her on a real vacation for once. He thought about the flexible scheduling, the remote work options, the freedom to be the father he'd been fighting to be for 5 years. And he thought about the woman standing in front of him, stripped of her armor, asking for help in the only way she knew how. "I'll stay," he said finally. But I'm holding you to everything you said in that meeting. The work-life balance, the respect, the compassion. If this is just a temporary gesture that disappears in a week, we're going to have a problem.
Understood, Clara said, and relief flooded her features. Thank you, Parker. Evan, thank you for not giving up on me. Before he could respond, both their phones buzzed simultaneously. Clara glanced at hers, and her expression shifted to something more professional. The Hendricks call is in 20 minutes. I'll need you on it. Your analysis of their portfolio was excellent, and I want them to hear directly from you about our recommendations. I'll be ready, Evan said, and started toward the door. Evan, Clara called, using his first name again. He turned. For what it's worth, Mia is lucky to have you. I meant that Friday night, and I mean it now. You're a good father. Don't let me make you forget that. Something in his chest loosened, a knot he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. Thanks, Clara. That means more than you know. He left the conference room feeling like he'd stepped into an alternate dimension. The promotion folder felt heavy in his hands, weighted with possibility and hope and the terrifying prospect that maybe, just maybe, things could actually get better. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of normalcy. Conference calls, spreadsheets, the usual rhythm of office work, but with a strange undercurrent of anticipation. Evan kept expecting Clara to revert, to snap at someone or make an unreasonable demand, but every interaction he witnessed was measured and respectful. When Tom asked a question during the Hendricks call that Clara clearly found basic, instead of her usual cutting response, she simply explained the answer patiently. When Sarah's daughter called with a school emergency, Clara immediately told her to go without hesitation. By lunchtime, the office was buzzing with confused gossip. Evan heard snippets in the break room. She actually said, please. Did you see her bring us coffee? I don't trust it. This has to be some kind of corporate psychology experiment. He kept his head down, made a sandwich, and tried not to think about how his life had become inexplicably complicated by doing one good deed on a rainy Friday night. He was back at his desk, halfway through the Morrison file revisions that Clara had actually told him weren't urgent after all, when his desk phone rang. Internal line, Clara's extension. Parker, he answered. It's me, Clara's voice said, and there was something different in her tone, less professional, almost hesitant. Are you free for lunch? Evan glanced at his half-eaten sandwich. I'm eating at my desk, but no, I mean... She paused. Would you let me take you to lunch? Properly. To apologize. And to talk. Every instinct screamed that this was crossing some kind of line, that having lunch with your boss 2 days after driving her home drunk was a recipe for complications. But there was something in her voice, that same vulnerability he'd heard Friday night, that made him hesitate. Clara, I don't think... It's not a date, she said quickly, reading his concerns. And it's not inappropriate. It's just lunch between colleagues. She stumbled over the word. Between people who are trying to figure out how to move forward from a difficult situation. Please, there's more I need to say, and I'd rather not do it in the office. Evan closed his eyes, already knowing he was going to say yes, even though it was probably a mistake. Where? There's a cafe 2 blocks north, Margot's. Do you know it? I'll find it. 30 minutes? Perfect. Thank you, Evan. She hung up before he could change his mind. Evan sat there for a moment, sandwich forgotten, wondering what exactly he'd just agreed to. Then he texted Mrs. Chen to confirm she could pick up Mia from school. She could, bless her. And tried to convince himself this was just a professional lunch, just 2 coworkers clearing the air. Nothing complicated about it at all. Margot's turned out to be a small French cafe with outdoor seating protected by a green awning and tiny tables that encouraged intimate conversation. Clara was already there when Evan arrived, seated at a corner table away from the other lunch crowd. She'd removed her suit jacket, and in just her silk blouse and reading glasses perched on her nose as she studied the menu, she looked almost approachable, almost normal. I took the liberty of ordering us water, she said as he sat down. I didn't know if you'd want wine, but I figured water was safe. Water's good, Evan said, accepting the menu from her. I've got to pick up Mia later. Right, of course. Clara set down her own menu. How is she? Your daughter? The question surprised him.
In 3 years, Clara had never asked about Mia beyond the bare minimum required by her presence in his life. She's good. Second grade is kicking her butt a little. She's struggling with math, but we're working through it. 7 years old? Yeah, 7 going on 17, according to her grandmother. A real smile crossed Clara's face, small but genuine. She sounds spirited. That's one word for it, Evan said, and found himself smiling too. Stubborn is another. Opinionated, fearless. She once told her teacher that the tooth fairy was economically suspicious because the exchange rate for teeth was inconsistent and poorly regulated. Clara laughed. Actually laughed, a sound Evan wasn't sure he'd ever heard from her. That's amazing. Where did she learn that? From listening to me explain my work when she asks what I do all day, Evan admitted. I'm raising a tiny economist. It's terrifying. The waitress came, took their orders, quiche for Clara, a sandwich for Evan, and left them in comfortable silence for a moment. The lunch crowd hummed around them, the smell of coffee and baking bread filling the air. It was almost peaceful. I want to explain Friday night, Clara said finally, her fingers tracing patterns on the condensation of her water glass. Not as an excuse, but so you understand. The anniversary of my mother's death is always hard, but this year something broke. I spent the morning at her grave, and then I went back to my apartment and realized I had no one to call. No friends to process it with, no family to remember her with, just me and 23 years of unprocessed grief. So you went to a bar, Evan said gently. So I went to a bar, she confirmed, and I drank until I couldn't feel anything, until the walls I'd built were too soaked to stand. And then I looked at my phone and saw your name, the person I'd been cruelest to, and I thought, if anyone will understand what it's like to keep functioning when your world has ended, it's Evan Parker. Evan's throat felt tight. I'm sorry. About your mother. 23 years doesn't make it stop hurting. No, Clara agreed. It really doesn't. Does it get easier? The grief? It gets different, Evan said, thinking of Mia's mother, of the way the sharp edges of loss had slowly worn smooth but never disappeared. You learn to carry it better, to find moments of happiness that don't feel like betrayal, but it never really goes away. I don't know how you do it, Clara said quietly. Raise a daughter alone, work full-time, keep showing up day after day with kindness intact. After what you've lost, you'd be justified in being angry at the world. But you're not. I'm plenty angry, Evan corrected. I'm angry that Mia's growing up without her mother. I'm angry that a drunk driver made a choice that destroyed my family. I'm angry every time she asks why she doesn't have a mom like her friends do. He paused. But being angry at everyone wouldn't bring Sarah back. And it would only hurt Mia. So I choose, every day, to be angry at the situation and kind to the people. It's hard as hell, but it's the only way I know to honor Sarah's memory, by being the father she would have wanted Mia to have. Clara was quiet for a long time, her eyes suspiciously bright. When she spoke, her voice was rough. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm surviving, Evan said. There's a difference. No, you're thriving. You're raising an incredible daughter. You're brilliant at your job despite having a nightmare boss. You drove across the city in a storm to help someone who didn't deserve it. That's not survival. That's heroism. It's really not, Evan protested, uncomfortable with the praise. I'm just doing what anyone would do. But that's the thing, Clara said, leaning forward. Most people wouldn't. Most people would have let my call go to voicemail, would have told themselves I deserved whatever happened, would have done the minimum and left me to face the consequences of my choices. But you didn't, and I need to know why. Their food arrived, providing a momentary reprieve. Evan used the time to collect his thoughts, to try to articulate something he wasn't sure he fully understood himself. Why had he helped her? Why did he keep helping her even now, when self-preservation should have him running the other direction? My wife Sarah, he said finally, used to volunteer at a homeless shelter downtown. Every Saturday morning, she'd go and serve breakfast and talk to people. I asked her once why she did it, why she gave up her weekend mornings to help strangers who couldn't give her anything back. And she said, because everyone deserves to be seen as human, especially when the world has decided they're not. He met Clara's eyes. Friday night, I saw you calling for help, and I thought about what Sarah would do. and I knew she'd go, so I went. A single tear tracked down Clara's cheek, which she quickly wiped away. I wish I'd known her. She sounds extraordinary. She was, Evan said simply. She made me want to be better than I am, and I think she'd be glad I helped you. Even though I've been terrible to you? Maybe especially because of that, Evan said. Sarah believed everyone had reasons for their behavior, even cruel behavior. She'd probably say you were hurting and didn't know how to ask for help. And she'd be right, wouldn't she? Clara nodded, unable to speak. They ate in silence for a while, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who'd seen each other's worst moments and decided understanding mattered more than judgment. Around them, the cafe continued its lunchtime rhythm, but at their corner table, something fundamental was shifting. I meant what I said this morning, Clara said eventually. About changing, about being better. But I need your help with something. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through something, and showed him the screen. It was a therapist's contact information. I made an appointment. First session is Wednesday evening. I've needed to do this for years, but I kept telling myself I could handle it alone, that asking for help was weakness. It's not, Evan said firmly. It's the bravest thing you can do. Will you... Clara stopped, started again. Will you hold me accountable to going? I'm very good at making excuses to avoid difficult things. But if I tell you I'm going, if someone else knows, I'm less likely to back out. I'll check in with you Wednesday, Evan promised. And Clara? I'm proud of you for making the appointment. That takes real courage. She gave him a watery smile. Stop being so understanding. It makes it harder to maintain my Ice Queen reputation. Your Ice Queen reputation took a pretty major hit when you brought everyone coffee this morning, Evan pointed out. Good, Clara said. That reputation was lonely as hell anyway. They finished their lunch, talking about lighter things. The Hendricks account, office politics, Mia's ongoing war with mathematics. Clara asked questions about his daughter with genuine interest, and Evan found himself sharing stories he usually kept private. Mia's obsession with dinosaurs despite being supposed to like princesses. Her insistence on wearing mismatched socks because fashion rules are just suggestions. Her habit of asking impossible philosophical questions right before bedtime. She sounds perfect, Clara said as they gathered their things to leave. She's everything, Evan agreed simply. Outside the cafe, they paused on the sidewalk. The lunch hour was winding down, people hurrying back to their offices. Clara put her jacket back on, transforming back into the professional she needed to be. But something in her eyes remained soft. Thank you for this, she said. For coming. For listening. For not writing me off as a lost cause. Everyone deserves a second chance, Evan repeated his refrain. You're not a lost cause, Clara. You're just someone who forgot how to let people in. But I think you're remembering. She smiled, and it transformed her face completely. I'm trying. One coffee at a time, apparently. They walked back to the office together, and if their colleagues noticed anything unusual about the boss and her employee returning from lunch together, laughing about something, nobody said anything, at least not where they could hear. The rest of Monday passed without incident. Clara remained consistent, firm but fair, demanding but respectful. At 4:30, when Evan started packing up to get Mia, Clara caught his eye across the office and nodded once. Permission granted. Acknowledgement received. He left without guilt for the first time in 3 years. That evening, after dinner and homework and the mighty battle to get Mia into bed, Evan sat on his couch with a beer and his phone. He'd been composing and deleting a text to Clara for 20 minutes. Finally, he settled on simple. Today was good. Thank you for the promotion and the lunch. Wednesday at 6 p.m., right? I'll check in. Her response came 3 minutes later. Wednesday at 6. Thank you for everything, Evan. I mean that. He stared at the message, at the use of his first name, at the sincerity he could feel even through text. Then he smiled, just a little, and thought maybe, just maybe, second chances were real after all. The week unfolded with a strange new rhythm. Tuesday brought a department-wide email from Clara, praising the team's work on the Hendricks account, with individual call-outs for excellence. Evan's name was first on the list. Wednesday morning, she stopped by his desk with actual conversation, asked about Mia's math homework, mentioned she'd found some economics games for kids that might help. At 5:45 Wednesday evening, she stopped by his desk again. Heading out, she said, and he could see the nerves in how tightly she held her briefcase. Appointment at 6. You've got this, Evan said. And hey, it's okay if it's hard, that's kind of the point. She nodded, grateful. I'll let you know how it goes. Thursday morning, there was coffee on his desk when he arrived, black, 1 sugar, with a sticky note. Therapy was hell, but I'm going back next week. Thanks for the push. GCV. Evan smiled and tucked the note into his desk drawer, next to Mia's school photos, and a drawing she'd made of their family, 3 stick figures holding hands, one of them noticeably taller than the others. That's you and me and Mrs. Chen, Mia had explained, because she's family too now. Family, he thought. Such a complicated, beautiful word. Friday afternoon, as he was preparing to leave for the weekend, his desk phone rang. Clara's extension. Parker, he answered, and was surprised to hear hesitation in her voice. Are you busy this weekend? She asked. Depends, he said carefully. What did you have in mind? There's a park near my apartment. Riverside Park. I was thinking, if it's not too forward, maybe I could meet Mia. I know that's a big ask, she rushed on, words tumbling over each other. And if it's too much too soon, I completely understand. But you talk about her so much, and she sounds wonderful, and I thought maybe... Clara, Evan interrupted gently. Breathe. He heard her exhale. Sorry, I'm nervous. I don't know how to do this. The friendship thing, if that's even what this is. Evan thought about it. Thought about the risk of letting Clara into his life, into Mia's life. Thought about the woman who'd been cruel and the woman who was trying desperately to change. Thought about second chances and the example he wanted to set for his daughter about forgiveness. Saturday afternoon, he said. 2:00. Riverside Park. But Clara? If you meet her, you're signing up. Mia doesn't do casual relationships. If she likes you, she'll want you around. So make sure you're ready for that commitment before you show up. I'll be there, Clara said immediately. I promise. And Evan, thank you for trusting me with this. Don't make me regret it, he said, but his tone was light. I won't, she vowed. I swear I won't. Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of perfect autumn afternoon that felt like a gift. Evan and Mia arrived at Riverside Park at 1:50, Mia wearing her favorite purple dress and her light-up sneakers, clutching a book she'd insisted on bringing in case she gets bored. So who is this friend again? Mia asked as they walked toward the playground. Her name is Clara. She works with me. She's been going through a hard time, and I thought it would be nice for her to meet you. Is she the dragon lady? Mia asked with devastating directness. Evan sighed. Maybe she used to be. But I think she's trying to be different now. So let's give her a chance, okay? Okay, Daddy, but if she's mean to you, I'm going to tell her to stop. My fierce protector, Evan said, ruffling her hair. Clara arrived exactly at 2:00, punctual as always, and Evan almost didn't recognize her. She was wearing jeans, actual jeans with a soft green sweater and sneakers. Her hair was down, casual, and she carried a bag that clinked suspiciously like it contained beverages. Hi, she said, and Evan could see how nervous she was. I hope I'm not late. Perfect timing, Evan assured her. Then, to Mia. Mia, this is my friend Clara. Clara, this is my daughter Mia. Mia studied Clara with the intensity of a scientist examining a new specimen. Clara, to her credit, didn't try to force anything, just smiled gently and said, It's very nice to meet you, Mia. Your dad talks about you all the time. Does he tell you about my math problems? Mia asked. He mentioned you're having some trouble with it, Clara said. Math can be tricky. I used to hate it until I realized it was just patterns. Once you see the patterns, it gets easier. I don't see any patterns, Mia said. I just see numbers being mean to me. Clara laughed, that genuine sound Evan was starting to recognize. That's fair. Numbers can definitely feel mean sometimes. Would you like to see something cool? She reached into her bag and pulled out not the drinks Evan had expected, but a small box. I brought you something. Your dad said you like dinosaurs. Mia's eyes went wide. You brought me a present? Just a small one, Clara said, handing over the box. I hope you like it. Mia tore into the wrapping to reveal a book. The Dinosaur Economics Guide. How Prehistoric Creatures Teach Us About Money. It was perfect. Absolutely perfect. combining Mia's two current obsessions in one glossy package.
This is the best book ever, Mia breathed, then looked up at Clara with something like awe. How did you know?
Your dad told me you liked both dinosaurs and economics, Clara said. I thought maybe someone made a book combining them. Turns out I was right. Can we read it now? Mia asked Evan, then immediately turned to Clara.
Will you read it with us?
And just like that, Clara Vaughn, former Ice Queen, Dragon Lady, terror of the 14th floor, sat down on a park bench between Evan and his daughter and began reading about how velociraptors understood supply and demand. Mia leaned against her shoulder by page 3. By page 10, she was asking Clara questions. By the end of the first chapter, she declared, I like you. You're not a dragon lady at all. You're more like a nice witch. Can we get ice cream? Clara looked at Evan, eyes shining with something that might have been tears. Can we? Yeah, Evan said softly. We can. They spent the next 2 hours at the park, playing on the swings, feeding ducks at the pond, eating ice cream that dripped down their hands while Mia chattered about school and dinosaurs and her theory that the Tooth Fairy was definitely running a small business. Clara listened to every word, asked questions, laughed at Mia's jokes, and Evan watched his two worlds collide in the most unexpected, beautiful way. As the sun started to set and Mia began to tire, Clara knelt down to Mia's level. Thank you for letting me hang out with you today, she said seriously. I had a really wonderful time. Can you come again next Saturday? Mia asked immediately. Clara looked to Evan, question in her eyes. He nodded, almost imperceptibly. I'd love that, Clara said. If it's okay with your dad. It's okay with me, Mia announced. Then, with the casual affection of a child who'd already adopted Clara into her circle, she hugged her. You're my friend now. Clara's arms came around Mia carefully, like she was holding something precious and breakable. I'm honored, she whispered. As they walked back to their cars, Mia skipping ahead with her new book, Clara touched Evan's arm. Thank you, she said, for this, for trusting me with her, for giving me a chance to be part of something good.
You showed up, Evan said simply. That's what matters. I'll keep showing up, Clara promised. For her, for you, for myself. I'm done being alone. Evan smiled. Good, because I think Mia's already planned next Saturday. Something about the Science Museum. I'll be there, Clara said, and he believed her. That night, as he tucked Mia into bed, she looked up at him with those two perceptive eyes. I like your friend Clara. Yeah? What do you like about her? She listens when I talk, and she's sad like you were sad, but she's getting happier, I think, like you did. Mia paused. Do you think she needs a family? Because Mrs. Chen says everybody needs a family, even grown-ups. Evan's heart clenched. Maybe she does, kiddo, maybe she does. Then she can share ours, Mia decided with the easy certainty of a 7-year-old. We have extra room. We do, don't we? Evan agreed softly. As he closed Mia's door and headed to his own room, his phone buzzed with a message from Clara. Thank you for today. I haven't felt that much like myself, the good parts of myself, in years. Mia is extraordinary. You've done an incredible job with her. Sleep well. See. Evan smiled and typed back. You were great with her. See you Monday. And Clara? Welcome to the family. The response came almost immediately. A simple heart emoji, followed by, I don't deserve this. Evan's fingers flew. Stop that. Yes, you do. Everyone deserves to be loved, even dragons learning to be human again. This time, the response took longer. When it came, it was just 2 words. Thank you, Evan. He fell asleep that night with a smile on his face, thinking about second chances and unlikely friendships and the way broken people could maybe, just maybe, help each other heal. Outside his window, the city hummed its endless song. And somewhere in Riverview Heights, in an apartment that felt a little less empty than it had last weekend, Clara Vaughn lay awake thinking the same thing. Monday would come, and with it work and deadlines and all the complexities of their unusual situation. But for now, for this weekend, something had shifted. The walls were coming down. And on the other side was something neither of them had dared hope for, the beginning of something real. The Science Museum turned out to be everything Mia had promised and more. 3 stories of interactive exhibits,
a planetarium that made even adults gasp at the simulated cosmos, and, Mia's personal favorite, a section on prehistoric economics that seemed designed specifically for a 7-year-old who'd memorized her dinosaur book in a week. Clara arrived 10 minutes early, clutching visitor passes she'd purchased online and wearing another outfit Evan had never seen before. Comfortable slacks and a soft blue sweater that made her look approachable, almost maternal. "I may have gone overboard," she admitted, showing him the passes. "I got us the full-day package with the planetarium show and the hands-on workshops. I wasn't sure what Mia would be interested in, so I just got everything." "You didn't have to do that," Evan started, but Mia had already spotted Clara and was racing across the museum lobby, her light-up sneakers flashing with each step. "Clara! Clara! Did you know they have real dinosaur bones here? Like actual fossils from millions of years ago?" Mia grabbed Clara's hand without hesitation, the gesture so natural it made Evan's chest ache. "And there's a thing where you can dig for fake fossils, and I can be a paleontologist." Clara's face transformed into pure joy, the kind of unguarded happiness Evan suspected she'd forgotten how to feel. "Then we better get started," she said. "Lead the way, Dr. Mia." They spent 6 hours at the museum. 6 hours of Mia dragging them from exhibit to exhibit, explaining things she'd learned with the confidence of a tiny professor. 6 hours of Clara asking questions, genuine, interested questions, and listening to the answers like they were the most important things she'd ever heard. 6 hours of watching his daughter and his boss laugh together over failed attempts to build the tallest tower in the physics section. Of seeing Clara's eyes light up when Mia correctly answered a quiz question about market economics. Of feeling something in his chest that he'd thought died with Sarah slowly, carefully beginning to unfold. It was in the planetarium, during the show about the formation of the solar system, that Mia fell asleep. The darkness, the soothing narrator's voice, and the exhaustion from hours of exploration finally caught up with her. She slumped against Clara's side, her small head finding Clara's shoulder like it belonged there. Clara froze for a moment, uncertain, then slowly, carefully wrapped her arm around Mia's shoulders, holding her secure. In the dim light of artificial stars, Evan saw Clara's profile. The gentle curve of her smile, the shimmer of tears on her cheeks, the way she looked down at the sleeping child against her with something like wonder. When the show ended and the lights came up, Clara whispered, "Should we wake her?" "Give her a few minutes," Evan whispered back. She's always like this after museums. Overloads her brain and then crashes. Clara nodded, not moving, content to be the pillow for a sleeping 7-year-old she'd known for exactly 1 week. They sat in the emptying planetarium, other families filing out around them, existing in a bubble of their own making. Finally, Clara spoke, her voice barely audible. "I never thought I'd have this." "Have what?" Evan asked gently. "This." She gestured vaguely at Mia, at him, at the space between them. "Family, connection, someone small and perfect falling asleep on me like I'm safe." Her voice cracked. "I spent so many years convincing myself I didn't need it, didn't want it, that success and money and power were enough. And then Friday night happened and you showed up, and now I'm sitting in a planetarium with your daughter asleep on my shoulder and I'm realizing I've wasted so much time being afraid." "Afraid of what?" Evan asked, though he thought he knew. "Of this. Of caring. Of letting people in close enough to hurt me." Clara looked at him, and in the low light, her vulnerability was almost painful to witness. "After my mother died, I decided I'd never let myself need anyone again. Never give anyone the power to leave me devastated. I built walls, Evan, walls so high and thick I forgot there was a world outside them, and I've been so lonely." The last word broke on a sob she tried to suppress. Evan reached out and took her free hand, the one not holding Mia, and squeezed. "You're not alone anymore. Not if you don't want to be." "I don't," Clara whispered. "God, I really don't. But I'm terrified I'll mess this up, that I'll revert to who I was and push you both away, that I'll hurt Mia the way I hurt you." "Then don't," Evan said simply. "You get to choose, Clara. Every day, every moment, you get to choose what kind of person you want to be. And if you slip, which you will, because you're human, you apologize and you try again. That's all any of us can do." Mia stirred then, blinking sleepily up at Clara. "Did I miss the stars?" she mumbled. "You saw most of them," Clara said,
her voice steadier now. You just took a little nap for the end. I'm hungry, Mia announced, sitting up and stretching. Can we get pizza? I want pizza with Clara. Clara looked to Evan, and he saw the question in her eyes. Is this okay? Are we moving too fast? Am I overstepping? He smiled and said, Pizza sounds perfect. There's a place near here that Mia loves.
Please. They ended up at a small Italian restaurant with checkered tablecloths and breadsticks that arrived faster than the menus. Mia sat between them in the booth, chattering about her favorite exhibits while systematically demolishing the breadsticks. Clara ordered a glass of wine, then seemed to think better of it and switched to iced tea. Evan noticed but didn't comment, just felt a quiet pride that she was being mindful, being careful. Over pizza, half cheese for Mia, half vegetarian for the adults, the conversation flowed easily. Mia asked Clara about her job, and Clara explained acquisitions in terms a 7-year-old could understand, finding good companies and helping them grow, like adopting plants and making sure they got enough water and sunlight. Mia asked if she'd ever met anyone famous, and Clara told a story about accidentally spilling coffee on a Fortune 500 CEO that had both of them laughing. Evan asked Clara how therapy was going, and she answered honestly. Hard, she said, really hard. Dr. Morrison doesn't let me hide behind corporate speak or deflection. She makes me actually feel things, which I'm discovering I'm terrible at. She paused. But also good. I'm starting to understand why I became who I became. The patterns, the defense mechanisms. Understanding doesn't excuse the behavior, but it helps me recognize it, so I can change it. I'm proud of you, Evan said, and meant it. That takes real courage. You say that a lot, Clara observed, that things take courage. Does it get easier, being brave? Sometimes, Evan said, thinking of the early days after Sarah's death, when getting out of bed had felt like climbing Everest. Sometimes bravery is just doing the next right thing, even when you're terrified, and then doing it again and again, until one day you realize you've been brave for so long it's become habit. The next right thing, Clara repeated softly. I like that. Mia, who'd been listening while coloring on her kid's menu, looked up. What's the next right thing right now? Ice cream sundaes, Clara said immediately, with total seriousness. Definitely ice cream sundaes. Mia grinned. I like how you think. They got ice cream sundaes. They walked around the neighborhood while Mia skipped ahead, pointing out dogs and interesting trees and a chalk drawing someone had made on the sidewalk. They ended up at a small park just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and pinks that looked too beautiful to be real. Mia climbed on the jungle gym while Evan and Clara sat on a bench, watching her play with the easy supervision of adults who knew she could handle herself. Thank you for today, Clara said after a while. This was one of the best days I've had in years, maybe ever. You're welcome here any time, Evan said. You know that, right? This isn't just me being nice to my boss. This is me genuinely enjoying your company. You're becoming a friend, Clara, a real one. She turned to look at him, and something in her expression made his breath catch. Is that all I am? A friend? The question hung between them, loaded with implications Evan wasn't sure he was ready to examine. Because the truth was, somewhere between the rainy Friday night and the coffee deliveries and the museum trips, something had shifted. Clara wasn't just his boss anymore, wasn't just the dragon he'd helped slay. She was becoming something else entirely, something that made his heart do complicated things when she smiled, something that filled the empty spaces in his life he'd convinced himself were fine staying empty. But it was too soon, too complicated, too risky with Mia's heart in the balance. I don't know, he admitted honestly. I know I care about you. I know seeing you happy makes me happy. I know Mia lights up when you're around, but Clara, I haven't done this since Sarah. Haven't even thought about doing this. And with our work situation and everything that's happened between us, it's okay. Clara cut him off gently. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not even sure what I'm feeling. I just know that when I'm with you and Mia, I feel like myself. The self I was supposed to be before grief and fear twisted me into something else. She smiled, self-deprecating. I'm probably just confusing gratitude with something else. You saved my life,
literally and figuratively. It's natural to develop feelings for someone who does that. Is that what you think this is? Evan asked. Gratitude? I don't know, Clara echoed his words back to him. But I know I don't want to lose this. Whatever this is, your friendship, Mia's affection, the feeling that I matter to someone. So if we need to just be friends, I can do that. I'll do whatever it takes to keep this. Evan wanted to say more, wanted to explore the complicated tangle of feelings in his chest, but Mia was running back toward them, breathless and grass-stained and grinning. Daddy, can Clara come to my school thing on Friday? We're doing presentations about our families, and I want to talk about how some families are made of people who choose each other, and Clara chose us. Evan's heart clenched. Clara's eyes went wide. Sweetheart, he started carefully, Clara has work on Friday. She might not be able to— What time is the presentation? Clara interrupted. 2:00, Mia said, in Mrs. Patterson's class, room 204. I'll be there, Clara said, and the certainty in her voice left no room for doubt. I'll leave work early. Nothing is more important than this. Mia threw her arms around Clara's neck. You're the best. Over Mia's head, Clara met Evan's eyes. Is that okay? She mouthed. He nodded, throat too tight to speak, because watching Clara promise to show up for his daughter, seeing the way she held Mia like she was precious, feeling the pieces of his carefully controlled life rearrange themselves to make room for her. It was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. They drove home separately as the evening deepened into night, but not before Mia insisted on a group hug in the parking lot that left all three of them laughing. Evan watched Clara drive away in her Mercedes, still such a contrast to his aging Honda, and felt Mia's small hand slip into his. I love her, Daddy, Mia said simply. Is that okay? Yeah, baby, Evan said, squeezing her hand. That's okay. Do you love her too? The question was innocent, uncomplicated by adult fears and hesitations. Evan thought about Clara's laugh, about the way she'd held Mia in the planetarium, about the woman she was becoming right before his eyes. I think I might be starting to, he admitted. Is that okay with you? Duh, Mia said with 7-year-old sass. She's awesome, and she makes you smile like you used to with Mommy, not the sad smile, the real one. Evan picked her up even though she was getting too big for it, held her close while she giggled. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart, Mia informed him. You're just finally noticing. That week took on a rhythm that felt both new and natural. Clara continued her transformation at work, still brilliant and demanding, but wrapped in compassion now. She remembered birthdays, asked about people's families, actually said good morning to the junior analysts instead of just striding past them. The office gossip mill worked overtime trying to figure out what had happened to their ice queen, but nobody complained about the change. Evan found himself looking forward to their morning coffee chats. Clara had started stopping by his desk every day around 9, 2 cups in hand, to discuss the day's priorities. They'd talk about work for 5 minutes, and then somehow always ended up on other topics. Mia's latest pronouncement about economic theory, Clara's therapy breakthroughs, the book he was reading, the cooking class she'd impulsively signed up for because I'm tired of takeout being my only skill. Wednesday brought Clara's 3rd therapy session, and she texted him afterward. Dr. Morrison says I have profound abandonment issues and maladaptive coping mechanisms. I told her I prefer emotionally efficient. She was not amused. But we're making progress. Talked about my mother today without completely breaking down. Baby steps. Evan replied, Baby steps are still steps. Proud of you. Her response was immediate. That means more than you know. Thursday night, his phone rang at 11 p.m. He was already in bed, drifting towards sleep, but Clara's name on the screen had him instantly alert. Hello? I'm sorry for calling so late. Her voice was strained, tight with barely controlled emotion. I didn't know who else to call. Can I just talk for a minute? Of course, Evan said, sitting up and turning on the bedside lamp. What's wrong? I ran into someone today, after work, an old colleague from my previous firm. She was with her family, husband, 2 kids, looked so happy, and she saw me and her whole face just closed, like I was something distasteful she had to acknowledge out of politeness. Clara's breath hitched.
She said, Clara, still married to the job I see. And it hit me that this is how people see me, how I've made them see me, as this cold, one-dimensional person whose entire existence is work. That's not who you are, Evan said firmly. But it was. For so long, it was. And I've hurt so many people being that person. I burned bridges, stepped on colleagues to get ahead, prioritized deals over relationships. And now I'm trying to change, but the damage is done. People will always see me as the dragon. Not everyone, Evan said. Mia doesn't see you that way. I don't see you that way. Not anymore. We see who you're becoming. But what if who I'm becoming isn't real? Clara's voice broke. What if this is just temporary and I slip back into old patterns? What if I hurt you and Mia the way I hurt everyone else? Clara, listen to me. Evan put every ounce of conviction into his words. Change is never linear. You're going to have bad days. You're going to slip up. You're going to encounter people who only remember who you were and can't see who you're becoming. That's part of the process. But the fact that you're worried about hurting us, the fact that you're aware of your patterns and actively working to change them, that's what makes this real. She was quiet for a long moment, and he could hear her breathing slowly evening out. How do you do that? She finally asked. Do what? Make everything feel manageable. Make me feel like I'm not completely broken beyond repair. Because you're not, Evan said simply. You're just human, messy and complicated and still learning, like all of us. I don't deserve you, Clara whispered. Stop saying that. You keep deciding what you do and don't deserve, but that's not how this works. I'm choosing to be here. Mia's choosing to care about you. You don't have to earn our affection, Clara. You just have to accept it. Another long silence. Then, thank you for answering, for talking me down, for not giving up on me. Never, Evan said. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's Friday, and you have a very important school presentation to attend. He heard her laugh, small but genuine. I'm nervous about that, you know. What if I mess it up? What if the other parents judge me? What if Mia realizes I'm not actually cool and just some broken woman playing at having a family? Clara, you're going to be great. Just be yourself. The real yourself, not the armor. Mia already loves you. Nothing you do tomorrow is going to change that. Okay, she said, sounding steadier now. Okay, I can do this. You can, he confirmed. Now seriously, sleep. I'll see you tomorrow. Evan? Her voice stopped him before he could hang up. I think I'm falling in love with you and Mia. I don't know what to do with that, but I needed to say it, even if just once. Good night. She hung up before he could respond, leaving him staring at his phone in the lamplight, heart pounding, mind racing. She was falling in love with him. And the terrifying thing was, as he lay back down and stared at his ceiling, he realized he was falling too, past the point of friendship, past the point of simple affection, into something deeper and more complicated and more wonderful than he'd thought possible. He didn't sleep much that night. Friday afternoon arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made everything feel possible. Evan left work at 1:30. Clara had insisted, had personally told their supervisor that he needed to be at his daughter's school event, and made it to Mia's classroom 20 minutes early. Other parents were already gathering, clutching phones ready to record their children's presentations. He found a seat near the back, trying not to think about how Sarah should have been here, how she'd have loved this. At 1:50, the classroom door opened and Clara walked in. She'd clearly left work too because she was still in her professional attire, tailored black pants and a white blouse, but she'd added a colorful scarf that softened the look. She scanned the room, found Evan, and her whole face lit up. She made her way over, ignoring the curious looks from other parents, and sat down beside him. Made it, she whispered. Traffic was hell, but I made it. I never doubted you, Evan whispered back. Mrs. Patterson called the class to order, and one by one, children stood up to present their family projects. There were traditional nuclear families, blended families, single-parent families, families with two dads, families with grandparents as primary guardians. Each child spoke with pride about what made their family special. Then it was Mia's turn. She stood at the front of the class holding a poster board covered in photos and drawings. My family is special, she began, because we chose each other. She pointed to a photo of her and Evan from last Christmas. This is my daddy. My mommy died when I was little, so it's been just us for a long time. Daddy works really hard and helps me with homework even when he's tired. Evan's throat constricted. Beside him, Clara reached over and squeezed his hand. This is Mrs. Chen, Mia continued, pointing to a drawing she'd made of their neighbor. She watches me sometimes and makes the best dumplings. She's like my grandma. Another drawing. This is my friend Tyler, even though he says bad words. He's family because he shares his snacks. Then Mia's face broke into a huge smile. And this is Miss Clara. She's my newest family. She works with my daddy, and she was really sad, but we made her happy again. She brings me books about dinosaurs and economics, and she lets me fall asleep on her shoulder, and she came to my presentation even though she has important work because she says I'm more important than work. Clara made a small sound beside him, something between a sob and a laugh. Her hand tightened on Evan's. My teacher said families are supposed to be people who live in the same house, Mia continued, but I think families are people who love you and show up for you and make you feel safe. So my family is me and Daddy and Mrs. Chen and Tyler and Miss Clara, and we're perfect just the way we are. The room erupted in applause. Mia beamed, clearly proud of herself. Mrs. Patterson looked a little teary, and Evan turned to see Clara openly crying, tears streaming down her face as she smiled the biggest, most genuine smile he'd ever seen from her. She called me family, Clara whispered. I'm family. Yeah, Evan said, his own eyes stinging. You are. After the presentations, there was a small reception in the classroom, cookies and juice boxes, while the kids showed their parents various projects. Mia dragged Clara over to her desk, showing her drawings and worksheets and the gold star she got on her math quiz. Other parents approached them, introducing themselves, and Evan watched Clara handle it beautifully, warm, friendly, interested in their children without being presumptuous about her place in Mia's life. One mother, Jessica, whose son was Tyler of the bad words, pulled Evan aside. I hope this isn't intrusive, but is that your partner? She seems lovely with Mia. Evan hesitated. She's a good friend. It's complicated. Jessica smiled knowingly. The best relationships usually are. For what it's worth, anyone who looks at your daughter the way she does is worth the complication. As the reception wound down and Mia hugged her friends goodbye, Clara knelt down to Mia's level. Thank you for including me in your family, she said softly. That's the greatest honor anyone has ever given me. You're welcome, Mia said matter-of-factly. But you have to come to Sunday dinner now. That's what families do. I wouldn't miss it, Clara promised. They walked out to the parking lot together, Mia between them, holding both their hands. The afternoon sun cast long shadows, and for a moment they looked like exactly what they were becoming, a family. Not traditional, not simple, but real. At their cars, Mia hugged Clara goodbye with the unself-conscious affection of childhood. I love you, Miss Clara. Clara's voice broke. I love you too, Mia, so much. After Mia was buckled into Evan's car, playing with a toy, Clara turned to him. Can we talk? Just for a minute? Of course. She took a breath, gathering courage. What I said last night on the phone, about falling in love with you both, I meant it. And I know it's complicated and messy and probably a terrible idea professionally, but I can't pretend anymore. I can't pretend this is just friendship when seeing you makes my heart race. When thinking about Mia makes me want to cry with happiness. When the idea of not being in your lives feels impossible. Evan's heart was pounding. Clara! You don't have to say anything, she rushed on. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know, because being honest about my feelings is part of changing, part of letting people in. And you've taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness. So here I am, vulnerable, terrified, completely in love with you and your daughter. Evan looked at this woman, once his tormentor, now his friend, possibly something more, standing in an elementary school parking lot confessing her feelings with raw honesty. He thought about Sarah, about the love he'd lost and never thought he'd find again. He thought about the example he wanted to set for Mia about courage and second chances. He thought about how Clara made him laugh, how she fit into their lives like a missing puzzle piece, how Mia had called her family. I'm falling for you too, he said quietly. I've been trying not to, trying to be sensible about workplace dynamics and protecting Mia's heart, and not moving too fast. But the truth is, I'm falling hard, and it terrifies me because I've already lost one person I loved. I don't know if I can survive losing another. Clara stepped closer, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her eyes. Then let's not lose each other. Let's be careful and honest and take this as slow as we need to. But let's also be brave enough to try. Because Evan, I've spent 23 years avoiding love because I was afraid of loss. And I'm done being afraid. I'd rather have whatever time we get together than spend another day playing it safe and ending up alone. Daddy! Mia's voice floated from the car window. Are you going to kiss her or what? Tyler says that's what grown-ups do when they like each other. They both laughed, the tension breaking into something lighter, easier. Your daughter is remarkably perceptive, Clara said. She gets it from her mother, Evan replied. Then, making a choice that felt both terrifying and inevitable, he leaned in. The kiss was soft, brief, more promise than passion, but it was real. And when they pulled apart, Clara was crying again, happy tears this time. Was that okay? He asked. I know we should probably talk more, establish boundaries, figure out how this works. It was perfect, Clara interrupted. And yes, we should talk. But right now, your daughter is watching us from the car and probably judging our technique, so maybe we table the logistics for later? Evan laughed and glanced at the car, where Mia was indeed watching with great interest and giving them an enthusiastic thumbs up. Sunday dinner? He offered. We can talk then, all three of us. Figure out what this looks like. Sunday dinner, Clara agreed. I'll bring wine and maybe dessert. Do you think Mia likes tiramisu? Mia likes anything with sugar in it. Clara smiled, that full, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. Then tiramisu it is. Now go, before your daughter stages a mutiny. I'll see you Monday at work, and Sunday at dinner, and, she hesitated, and hopefully a lot of days in between. Count on it, Evan said. He drove home with Mia chattering about the presentation, about how Miss Clara was now officially part of their family, about whether they should teach her their secret pancake recipe. And Evan let himself feel something he hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. Hope that maybe broken people could heal together, that maybe love could happen twice, that maybe, just maybe, they were all going to be okay. That night, after Mia was asleep, Evan sat on his couch and looked at the framed photo of Sarah on the bookshelf. I think you'd like her, he said quietly to the image of his late wife's smiling face. She makes Mia laugh. She makes me remember what happiness feels like. And I think you'd tell me it's okay to love her, to let her in, to stop punishing myself for surviving when you didn't. The apartment was silent, but in that silence, Evan felt something release. A permission he'd been waiting 5 years to give himself. Sarah would want him to be happy, would want Mia to have a mother figure, would want their family to grow and change and include new people. His phone buzzed with a text from Clara. Thank you for today. Thank you for taking a chance on a dragon learning to be human. Sleep well. Dream sweet. I'll be thinking of you. See. Evan smiled and replied, Thank you for showing up, for being brave, for loving my daughter, for helping me remember I'm allowed to be happy. See you Sunday. E. The response came quickly. I love you. I know it's too soon to say, and I'll probably regret being this forward, but I can't help it. I love you both. Good night. Evan stared at those 3 words. I love you, and felt his heart do something complicated and wonderful. He typed slowly, carefully, meaning every word. I love you too. Sleep well, Clara. Our dragon, who's really a princess learning she was never a monster after all. Sunday would come, and with it conversations about how to navigate their relationship, about work boundaries and Mia's needs, and the complexity of building something new from broken pieces. But tonight, in the quiet of his apartment, Evan let himself simply feel grateful. Grateful for rainy Friday nights and desperate phone calls. Grateful for second chances and brave choices. Grateful for a little girl who saw the good in everyone, and a woman who was learning to see the good in herself. Outside, the city hummed its endless song, and inside 3 different homes, 3 people who'd found each other in the unlikeliest way fell asleep thinking the same thing. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but they'd face them together, and together they were stronger than they'd ever been alone. Sunday morning dawned with the kind of golden light that made everything feel significant, like the universe was paying attention. Evan woke early, staring at his ceiling and replaying Friday's kiss in his mind until Mia's voice interrupted his thoughts from the doorway. "You're thinking about Clara," she announced, padding into his room in her dinosaur pajamas. "You have the same smile Mommy used to give you in the old pictures." Evan's chest constricted. They didn't talk about Sarah often, not because it hurt too much, but because Mia's memories of her mother were so fragile, more feeling than fact. "Does that bother you?" he asked carefully, pulling her up onto the bed beside him. "That I'm thinking about Clara that way?" Mia considered this with the seriousness she applied to all important matters. "Mommy's gone," she said finally, "and you've been sad for a really long time, Daddy. Not sad like crying, but sad like there's a piece of you missing. Clara makes that piece not hurt as much." She paused. "Is that bad? That someone new makes it better?" "No, baby," Evan said, pulling her close. "That's not bad at all. Your mom loved us so much, and I think she'd want us to be happy, even if that means letting new people into our family." "Good," Mia said decisively, "'cause I already told Tyler that Claire's going to be my new mom, and if I was wrong, that's going to be really embarrassing." "Mia!" Evan couldn't help but laugh, even as panic fluttered in his chest. "We haven't even had our first official date yet. We're taking things slow." "Adults are weird about slow," Mia observed. "You already love her. She already loves us. Why wait?" "Because slow is responsible. Because we want to make sure we're making good choices for everyone, especially you." Mia rolled her eyes with impressive 7-year-old sass. "Fine. Be slow. But she's still coming to dinner tonight, right?" "Yes, she's still coming to dinner." "Then I need to clean my room, and we need to make the good pasta, and you need to wear your nice shirt, not the one with the stain." Evan spent the next 8 hours in a state of nervous preparation that Mia found endlessly amusing. He cleaned the apartment until it gleamed, changed his shirt 3 times, made his grandmother's pasta sauce from scratch, the one that took 4 hours and required more stirring than any recipe should reasonably demand. Mia helped by setting the table with the nice dishes they usually only used for Thanksgiving and arranging a bouquet of flowers she insisted they buy from the grocery store. "This is just dinner," Evan said as Mia adjusted a fork for the 3rd time. "We're not trying to impress her." "Daddy," Mia said with infinite patience, "you're wearing cologne. You never wear cologne. You're absolutely trying to impress her." She wasn't wrong. At 5:30, when the doorbell rang, Evan's heart jumped into his throat. He opened the door to find Clara standing there, looking nothing like the polished executive he'd known for 3 years. She wore dark jeans and a soft cream sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders, and she was clutching a covered dish and a bottle of wine like lifelines. She looked nervous and beautiful, and so perfectly imperfect that Evan forgot to breathe for a moment. "Hi," she said. "I brought tiramisu and wine, and also backup wine in case the first wine isn't good. And I'm rambling, aren't I?" "Adorably," Evan said, taking the dish and one of the wine bottles. "Come in. Mia's been rearranging furniture all afternoon in your honor." "I have not," Mia's voice called from inside. "I've been making everything perfect, which is different," Clara laughed, and Evan saw some of her tension ease. She stepped inside, and Mia immediately attached herself to Clara's side, hugging her waist. "You're here. Do you like flowers? I picked them myself." "Well, Daddy paid for them, but I chose them." "They're beautiful," Clara said, her voice thick with emotion. "Everything is beautiful. Thank you for having me." "You're family now," Mia said matter-of-factly. "You don't have to thank family for inviting you. That's just silly." They settled into dinner with surprising ease. The pasta was perfect, even if Evan did say so himself, and the conversation flowed naturally between the 3 of them. Clara told stories about her disastrous attempt at her cooking class, where she'd somehow managed to both undercook and burn the same chicken. Mia demonstrated her latest math breakthrough, showing Clara how she'd finally understood division by thinking of it as sharing cookies fairly. Evan found himself watching them interact, Clara's genuine interest in every word Mia said, Mia's complete comfort with this woman who'd been a stranger just a few weeks ago. After dinner, while Mia was distracted with dessert, Clara touched Evan's hand across the table. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. The three of us? About what this is and what it means? Evan nodded, his pulse quickening. Mia, can you put your fork down for a minute? Miss Clara and I want to talk to you about something important. Mia's eyes went wide. Are you getting married? No, both adults said simultaneously, then laughed at their synchronized panic. Not yet anyway, Clara amended, then flushed. Sorry, that was presumptuous. What I mean is, she took a breath, steadying herself. Mia, you know how you said I'm part of your family now? Yeah, Mia said, because you are. Well, your dad and I have been talking, and we realize that we have feelings for each other, grown-up feelings, the kind that might mean we want to spend more time together, maybe go on dates, maybe, if things work out, become a real family. Clara's voice was shaking slightly. But the most important thing is making sure you're okay with that. Because you come first, always. If you're uncomfortable or confused or you need more time, are you asking if it's okay if you're my dad's girlfriend? Mia interrupted. Clara glanced at Evan, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, Clara said, that's what I'm asking. Mia considered this for approximately 3 seconds. Okay. Okay, Evan repeated. Just okay. Don't you have questions or concerns or, Daddy, she makes you happy. She makes me happy. She's nice and smart, and she came to my school thing even though she had important work. Why would I say no? Mia paused. But if you're dating, does that mean you'll kiss more? Because Tyler says his parents kiss all the time and it's gross. But I don't think it's gross. I think it's nice. Clara was crying and laughing at the same time. You're remarkable. You know that? Everyone keeps saying that, Mia said. Can I have more tiramisu now? After Mia was granted her second helping and had retreated to the living room to watch a movie, Evan and Clara found themselves alone in the kitchen, cleaning dishes in comfortable silence. Clara washed while Evan dried, their shoulders brushing occasionally, the intimacy of the mundane task making his heart ache in the best possible way. That went well, Clara said finally. Better than I expected, honestly. I had a whole speech prepared about taking things slow and making sure she was comfortable. Mia has never been one for slow, Evan said. When she decides something, she commits completely. It's terrifying and beautiful. She gets that from you, Clara observed. The commitment part. You drove across the city in a storm for someone who'd made your life hell. That's pretty committed. That was different. Was it? Clara set down the dish she was washing and turned to face him. I think you saw someone who needed help, and you decided right then to show up. No hesitation, no calculating the cost, just pure instinctive kindness. She stepped closer. That's who you are, Evan, and I'm so grateful that's who you are, because otherwise I'd still be drowning in my own misery, alone in that apartment, convinced I was too broken to fix. Evan set down his towel and cupped her face in his hands. You're not broken. You never were. You were just hurting and didn't know how to ask for help. I'm still hurting, Claire admitted. Therapy is bringing up things I've buried for decades. Some days are really hard. Some days I want to retreat back into my walls because being vulnerable is exhausting. Then on those days you call me, Evan said. You don't have to face everything alone anymore. I'm not used to having someone to call, Clara whispered. I'm not used to mattering to people. What if I mess this up? What if I hurt you without meaning to? Then we'll talk about it. We'll work through it. That's what people who love each other do. He paused. And I do love you, Clara. I know it's fast and probably crazy, but I love you. The you who brought coffee to the office. The you who read dinosaur books in the park. The you who stood in a school parking lot and confessed your feelings even though you were terrified. I love you too, Clara breathed. So much it scares me. I didn't think I was capable of feeling this way, of wanting someone this badly, of... She stopped, emotion overwhelming her. Evan kissed her then, really kissed her. Not the brief promise from the parking lot, but something deeper, fuller. She melted against him, her arms wrapping around his neck. And for a moment the world narrowed to just this. Clara's lips on his, her hands in his hair, the soft sound she made when he pulled her closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara's eyes were shining. Wow, she said. Yeah, Evan agreed. Wow.
Daddy, you guys are being gross in there, Mia called from the living room, but her voice was delighted rather than disgusted. They finished the dishes with foolish smiles on their faces, stealing glances at each other like teenagers. When the kitchen was clean, they joined Mia in the living room, settling on the couch with her between them. She immediately leaned against Clara, who wrapped an arm around her shoulders with the kind of natural affection that made Evan's heart squeeze. The movie played, some animated thing about talking animals that Mia loved, but Evan found himself watching Clara and Mia more than the screen. The way Clara stroked Mia's hair absently, the way Mia had pulled Clara's other hand into her lap, holding it like it was precious. The way Clara kept glancing at him over Mia's head, her expression equal parts wonder and disbelief, like she couldn't quite believe this was her life now. Halfway through the movie, Mia fell asleep, her head on Clara's shoulder. Clara froze, afraid to move and disturb her, and Evan had to suppress a laugh at the panic in her eyes. "What do I do?" Clara mouthed. "Just stay still," Evan whispered. "She's a deep sleeper. You're fine." My arm's going numb. Welcome to parenthood. Numb limbs are part of the package. Clara smiled despite herself, adjusting slightly to get more comfortable without waking Mia. They sat like that for another 20 minutes, the movie playing softly, Mia sleeping peacefully. The three of them cocooned in the kind of domestic contentment Evan had thought he'd never find again. When the movie ended, Evan carefully lifted Mia, she barely stirred, and carried her to her room. Clara followed, watching from the doorway as he tucked his daughter in, brushed the hair from her face, kissed her forehead. "You're a wonderful father," Clara whispered as they retreated to the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed. "I'm doing my best," Evan said. "Some days that feels like enough. Other days I'm convinced I'm screwing everything up." "That's probably how all good parents feel," Clara observed. "The ones who think they're doing everything right are usually the most delusional." They settled back on the couch, this time with no child between them, and suddenly the space felt charged with possibility. Clara tucked herself against Evan's side, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. It felt right in a way that made him ache, like a piece of himself he hadn't known was missing had clicked back into place. "I need to tell you something," Clara said after a while, her voice quiet in the dimness of the room. "About work? About us at work?" Evan tensed slightly. He'd been trying not to think about the complications, about HR policies and office politics, and the potential fallout of dating his boss. "Okay. I talked to HR on Friday, confidentially, about the ethical implications of a supervisor having a relationship with a direct report." Clara tilted her head to look at him. "The policy doesn't forbid it, but it does require disclosure and, in some cases, reassignment." Evan's stomach dropped. "You want to reassign me?" "No," Clara said quickly. "God, no. But I want to do this right, so I'm proposing that we disclose the relationship to HR, not to the whole company, just officially on record, and I'll recuse myself from decisions about your compensation and performance reviews. Marcus can handle those instead. That way there's no conflict of interest, no appearance of impropriety." "You've really thought this through," Evan said, impressed despite his nervousness. "I've spent 3 weeks thinking about nothing else," Clara admitted. "How to make this work without compromising either of our careers. How to protect you from office gossip. How to make sure no one can accuse you of sleeping your way to success or accuse me of favoritism." "People are going to talk regardless," Evan pointed out. "Let them," Clara said with surprising fierceness. "Let them gossip and speculate and judge. I spent 23 years caring too much about what people thought of me, and it made me miserable. I'm done with that. I'm choosing happiness, even if it comes with complications." Evan pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Have I mentioned that I love you?" "Once or twice," Clara said, smiling against his chest, "but I don't mind hearing it again." "I love you," he repeated. "I love your courage. I love how you're facing your demons head on. I love watching you with Mia. I love that you're thinking about HR policies because you want to protect both of us." "I love you too," Clara whispered. "I love your kindness. I love your patience with me. I love the way you look at your daughter like she hung the moon. I love that you answered your phone that night when you had every reason not to." They stayed like that for another hour, talking softly about logistics and feelings and fears. Clara confessed that she was terrified of meeting Evan's extended family,
convinced his mother would hate her for how she'd treated him. Evan admitted that he was worried about how quickly things were moving, not because he didn't want it, but because he was afraid of the fall if it didn't work out. Clara promised to be patient with his fears. Evan promised to believe her when she said she wasn't going anywhere. At 9:30, Clara reluctantly said she should go. Early morning meeting tomorrow, and she was trying to be better about getting enough sleep. Evan walked her to the door, not ready to let her leave, even though he knew she had to. "Thank you for tonight," Clara said, her hand on the doorknob. "For including me in your family dinner. For letting me be part of this." "You are part of this," Evan said. "You're not just visiting anymore, Clara. You're home." Her eyes filled with tears. "I've never had a home. Not since my mother died. I've had apartments and addresses, but never a place that felt like home." "Well, now you do," Evan said simply. "Whenever you want it, our door is always open." Clara kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. "I'll see you tomorrow at work," she said, "where I will be completely professional and definitely not thinking about kissing you in the supply closet." "Clara!" Evan laughed, scandalized. "What? I'm being honest about my feelings. Isn't that what we agreed on?" Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "But fine, I'll keep my supply closet fantasies to myself." "You're terrible," Evan said, but he was grinning. "You love it," Clara countered. "I do," he admitted. "I really, really do." After she left, Evan leaned against the closed door, smiling like an idiot. He checked on Mia, still sleeping soundly, and then got ready for bed himself, his phone buzzing with a text just as he was climbing under the covers. Clara. "I'm home. Well, at my apartment, but it felt wrong calling it home when home is wherever you and Mia are. Is that too much? Am I being too intense?" Evan smiled and typed back, "No such thing as too intense, not with us. Sleep well. Dream of supply closets." Her response was immediate. "I'm never living that down, am I?" Evan, "Not a chance, but I love you anyway." Clara, "I love you too. Good night, Evan. Thank you for being brave enough to answer your phone 3 weeks ago." Evan, "Best decision I ever made. Sweet dreams." He set his phone on the nightstand and turned off the light, but sleep was a long time coming. His mind was too busy replaying the evening, cataloging happy moments, imagining a future that seemed suddenly, miraculously possible. A future with Clara in it. A future where Mia had a mother figure who loved her fiercely. A future where he wasn't drowning in loneliness anymore. Monday morning brought a return to routine, but everything felt different now. Evan arrived at the office to find coffee already on his desk. Black, 1 sugar, with a sticky note that made him laugh. Completely professional thoughts only. CV. He sent her an email thanking her for the coffee and absolutely not mentioning supply closets. She replied with a smiley face emoji, which from Clara Vaughn was basically a declaration of love. The week unfolded in a pattern of stolen moments and careful professionalism. At work, they were colleagues, respectful, collaborative, appropriate. But there were small signs that things had changed. The way Clara's hand would brush his when passing files, the secret smiles they exchanged during boring meetings, the text messages that came throughout the day. Clara. Marcus just used the word synergy unironically. Send help. Evan. Hang in there. Only 3 more hours until you can escape. Clara. 3 hours until I can see you and Mia. That's what I'm hanging on for. Wednesday brought Clara's 4th therapy session, and she called him afterward from her car, needing to talk through the difficult things Dr. Morrison had brought up about her relationship with her father. Evan listened, offered comfort, reminded her that she was doing the hard work of healing and he was proud of her. She cried, thanked him, said she loved him, and promised to see him Friday when she was coming over for dinner again. Friday's dinner became a standing date. Clara would arrive at 6, help Mia with homework while Evan cooked, and they'd eat together like the family they were becoming. After Mia went to bed, Evan and Clara would have time alone, sometimes talking, sometimes watching movies, sometimes just existing in each other's presence. They were taking things slow physically, both aware that Mia's needs came first, and rushing into anything could complicate an already delicate situation. But the emotional intimacy was building quickly, the kind of deep connection that came from 2 people who'd seen each other's worst moments and chosen to stay anyway. 3 weeks into their official relationship, Clara showed up at Friday dinner with an announcement.
I have something to tell you both, she said over pasta and salad. Something I'm excited about and also terrified about. Mia's eyes went wide. Are you pregnant? Emily's mom was pregnant, and that's how she told them. No, Clara laughed, choking on her water.
Definitely not pregnant. It's about work. She looked at Evan. I've been offered a promotion, Senior Vice President of Acquisitions. It's a significant step up, more money, more responsibility. But here's the thing, it would mean I'm no longer your direct supervisor. You'd be reporting to Marcus instead. Evan's mind raced through the implications. That's amazing, Clara. Congratulations. You're not upset, she asked, about the reporting structure change? Why would I be upset? This solves our HR complication problem, and you've earned this promotion. You're brilliant at what you do. I told them I needed to think about it, Clara admitted, because the new role would mean more travel. 3 or 4 trips a month, usually just a few days at a time, and I didn't want to accept without making sure you two were okay with that. Mia frowned. Would you miss dinners? Sometimes, Clara said honestly, but I'd always try to be back for Fridays, and we could video chat every night I'm gone. And maybe sometimes, if your dad says it's okay, you two could come with me on trips during school breaks. You want us to come with you? Evan asked, touched by the implication of that offer. I want you in my life as much as possible, Clara said. In every way possible. This job is important to me, but you're more important. So if having both means getting creative about logistics, I'm willing to do that. Take the job, Evan said firmly. We'll make it work. We'll figure it out together. Together, Clara repeated, smiling. I like the sound of that. She took the job. The announcement went out the following Monday, and the office buzzed with speculation and surprise. Clara Vaughn, the Ice Queen, had somehow humanized enough to be promoted to the executive level. People whispered about what had changed, but no one could quite put their finger on it. Only a few people knew about her relationship with Evan, and they kept it quiet, respecting the privacy both of them valued. Life settled into a new rhythm. Clara's promotion meant different hours, occasional travel, and new challenges, but it also meant freedom to be more open about their relationship at work. They went to the office holiday party together, Clara's hand in Evan's, and if their colleagues gossiped, it was with more surprise than malice. The terrifying dragon had been tamed by a single father and his remarkable daughter, the story went, though those who knew them understood it was more complicated than that. Clara hadn't been tamed, she'd been saved. And in saving her, Evan and Mia had found something they hadn't known they were missing: completion. 4 months into their relationship, on a Saturday morning in February, Clara showed up at the apartment with a nervous energy that immediately put Evan on alert. Mia was at a birthday party, giving them rare alone time, and Clara paced his living room like she was preparing for a difficult negotiation. Okay, you're making me nervous, Evan said. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Clara said quickly. Everything's right, that's the problem. Everything is so right, and I'm terrified I'm going to ruin it by moving too fast, but I also can't keep pretending I don't want more. Clara, breathe. What are you talking about? She stopped pacing and faced him. My lease is up next month. I have to decide whether to renew or find a new place. And I've been thinking, what if I didn't renew? What if I looked for something bigger, something that could fit 3 people instead of 1? Evan's heart stopped. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking if you consider moving in together, Clara said in a rush. Not immediately, not until we're both ready. But maybe we start looking at places? 3 bedrooms, so Mia has her own space, and we have ours. Maybe a yard where she can play. A real home for the family we're becoming. She paused. Unless that's too fast. I'll understand if it's too fast. I can just find a new apartment on my own and... Yes, Evan interrupted. Clara blinked. Yes? Yes, let's look at places. Yes, let's plan for a future together. Yes to all of it. He pulled her into his arms. I love you. I want to build a life with you, a real permanent life. And I think Mia would be thrilled. You think? Clara's voice was muffled against his chest. I know, Evan corrected. She asked me last week if you were ever going to officially move in because she's tired of you going home at night. Clara laughed, the sound watery with emotion. She said that? She said, and I quote, It's silly that Miss Clara leaves when she's just going to come back tomorrow. She should just stay. Evan pulled back to look at her. So yes, let's find a home together. All three of us. They spent the next month house hunting, dragging Mia to open houses and arguing good-naturedly about neighborhoods and school districts and whether they really needed a two-car garage. Mia took her role as house decider very seriously, vetoing any place that didn't have a good reading nook or what she deemed proper dinosaur display potential. They found it in early March, a three-bedroom craftsman-style house in a quiet neighborhood with a yard and a porch and built-in bookshelves that made all three of them sigh with longing. The kitchen was outdated but functional. The master bedroom had space for a king-size bed, and Mia's room had a window seat that she claimed immediately. There was even a small office where Evan could work from home, and Clara could set up her laptop during her remote work days. "This is it," Clara said, standing in the empty living room and looking around with tears in her eyes. "This is home." "Yeah," Evan agreed, pulling her and Mia close. "This is home." The paperwork took 6 weeks. They moved in on a Saturday in late April, friends and colleagues helping haul boxes and furniture. Mrs. Chen brought dumplings and cried happy tears, declaring this the best thing that could have happened to her family. Mia supervised the placement of every piece of furniture, insisting her dinosaur collection be prominently displayed in the living room because it's a family home and dinosaurs are part of this family. That first night, after all the boxes were unpacked and the helpers had left, and Mia was asleep in her new room, Evan and Clara sat on their new porch swing, watching fireflies dance in their new backyard. Clara's head was on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, both of them exhausted and happy and slightly overwhelmed by the enormity of what they'd done. "We bought a house," Clara said, wonder in her voice. "We're living together. We're really doing this." "Having second thoughts?" Evan teased. "Not even for a second," Clara said. "I'm just amazed that this is my life now. 6 months ago, I was alone in that sterile apartment, drowning in grief and convinced I didn't deserve anything better. And now I have you and Mia and a home with a yard and a porch swing." She turned to look at him. "You saved my life, Evan Parker. I need you to know that." "We saved each other," Evan corrected. "You taught me it was okay to be happy again, to love again, to believe in second chances." "Second chances," Clara repeated softly. "I like that. We get to start over, build something new from our broken pieces." "Not broken," Evan said, kissing her temple. "Healing. There's a difference." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of their new neighborhood, feeling the weight and lightness of new beginnings. Inside, in her new room, Mia slept peacefully, dreaming of dinosaurs and economics and the family she'd chosen. And on the porch, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way held each other close and marveled at how one rainy Friday night, one desperate phone call, one choice to show up had changed everything. "I love you," Clara whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Evan replied. "Welcome home." And finally, after 23 years of running from connection, Clara Vaughn had found exactly that. A home, a family, a place where she belonged. Not because she'd earned it or deserved it, but simply because two people had looked at her and decided she was worth saving, worth loving, worth fighting for. The dragon had learned to be human again, and in learning she'd discovered something she'd never expected, that vulnerability wasn't weakness, that love wasn't loss, and that sometimes the family you need finds you in the most unexpected ways, through tears and coffee cups, through dinosaur books and school presentations, through the simple radical act of answering the phone when someone whispers, "Please help, I'm in trouble." They'd all been in trouble in their own ways, but together they'd found their way home. The seasons changed the way they always did, but now those changes meant something different. Summer brought lazy mornings in the backyard where Mia chased butterflies, while Clara attempted to garden with more enthusiasm than skill. Evan would watch them from the kitchen window while making breakfast, his heart so full it ached. The good kind of ache, the kind that meant healing. Fall arrived with parent-teacher conferences where both he and Clara sat side by side, Clara's hand in his, listening to Mrs. Patterson praise Mia's progress, and noting with a knowing smile that family stability has done wonders for her confidence. Winter meant the three of them decorating their first Christmas tree together, Mia insisting on putting the star on top while balanced on Evan's shoulders, and Clara steadying them both, laughing and warning them not to break anything. It was a Tuesday evening in January, nearly 15 months after that rainy Friday night, when everything shifted again. Evan was cooking dinner, nothing fancy, just tacos, while Mia sat at the kitchen table working on a project for school. Clara was due home from a 3-day business trip any minute, and Mia kept glancing at the clock with the kind of anxious anticipation that came from missing someone. "Do you think she'll like my surprise?" Mia asked for the third time, gesturing to the welcome home banner she'd made from construction paper and enough glitter to constitute an environmental hazard. "She's gonna love it," Evan assured her. "She always loves everything you make." "That's because she loves me," Mia said matter-of-factly. "Like really loves me. Not just because she has to, but because she chose to." Evan turned from the stove to look at his daughter, struck by the wisdom in her words. "You're right. She did choose you. She chooses us every day." "I know," Mia said. "That's why I have a question." She took a breath, suddenly looking nervous in a way that made Evan's parental alarm bells ring. "Daddy, can Clara adopt me? Like, officially? So she's not just my bonus mom, but my real mom?" The wooden spoon Evan was holding clattered to the floor. "What? Can Clara adopt me?" Mia repeated, more insistent now. "I've been researching it at the library with Mrs. Chen. She helped me use the computer. And I found out that if you're married to someone, they can adopt your kid. So if you and Clara got married, she could adopt me, and then she'd be my mom for real. Forever. Even if something happened." Evan's mind was reeling. "Sweetheart, that's a really big thing to think about. Have you talked to Clara about this?" "No, I wanted to ask you first, because you're my dad and you have to say yes before she can adopt me. That's how it works." Mia's eyes were filling with tears, that wobbling kind that meant she was about to completely break down.
"I just want it to be real, Daddy. I want her to be my mom officially. What if something happens and she has to leave? What if there's some rule that says she can't be my mom because it's not legal? I can't," her voice cracked. "I can't lose another mom." Evan was across the kitchen in 2 strides, pulling Mia into his arms as she started to cry in earnest. "Oh, baby, you're not going to lose her. Claire's not going anywhere." "But we don't know that," Mia sobbed into his chest. "We didn't know Mommy was going to leave either, and then she was just gone. And I know Claire's not going to die probably, but what if she decides she doesn't want us anymore? What if she realizes we're too much work? If she adopted me, she couldn't just leave. She'd be stuck with us." "First of all," Evan said, holding her tight and trying to keep his own emotions in check, "Clara would never think you're too much work. She loves you more than anything. And second, she's not staying with us because she's stuck. She's staying because she wants to be here, because we're her family." "But I want it to be forever," Mia whispered. "I want to know for sure." The sound of keys in the front door made them both look up. Clara's voice called out, "I'm home. Where are my favorite people?" Then she appeared in the kitchen doorway, travel bag still over her shoulder, and her smile immediately disappeared when she saw Mia's tears. "What's wrong? What happened?" She dropped her bag and rushed over, kneeling beside Mia's chair and cupping her face with both hands. "Baby, what is it? Are you hurt?" Mia looked at Evan, then back at Clara, and then the words tumbled out in a rush. "I want you to adopt me. I want you to be my real mom, not just my bonus mom. I want it to be forever and official and legal, so no one can say you're not my mom. Can you do that? Will you do that?" Clara's face crumpled. She looked at Evan over Mia's head, shock and hope and fear all warring in her expression. He gave her a small nod. Permission, encouragement, confirmation that he was okay with this conversation. Clara turned back to Mia, tears streaming down her own face now. "Mia," she said, her voice shaking, "I would be honored to adopt you. More than honored. It would be the greatest privilege of my life. But there are things we'd have to do first, legal things, and one of those things is that your dad and I would need to be married." "So get married," Mia said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. "You love each other. You live together. You're basically already married. Just make it official." Clara looked at Evan again, and he saw the question in her eyes. They'd talked about marriage, of course,
Late-night conversations about futures and forever, careful discussions about timing and readiness. But they'd been taking things slow, making sure the foundation was solid before building anything permanent on top of it. They'd been thinking another year, maybe two. They'd been thinking proposal and engagement and a proper wedding. They hadn't been thinking about an 8-year-old taking matters into her own hands. But looking at his daughter's tear-stained face, at Clara's hopeful expression, at the family they'd built from broken pieces and second chances, Evan realized that slow was a luxury they didn't need anymore. They were already committed, already forever. The paperwork was just a formality. "Clara," he said, and his voice came out rough with emotion. "I know this isn't the romantic proposal you deserve. I know we plan to wait to do this right, but our daughter wants you to be her mother officially, and honestly, I can't think of anything I want more. So I'm asking you, here in our kitchen with taco meat burning on the stove and glitter all over the floor, will you marry me?" Clara's laugh was half sob. "The taco meat is burning?" "Probably," Evan admitted, "but priorities. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Clara said, and the word was fierce and certain. "Yes, of course, yes. I've wanted to marry you since the day we moved into this house, and Mia made us all put our handprints in cement on the porch. Yes to marriage, and yes to adoption, and yes to forever with both of you." Mia threw her arms around Clara's neck, nearly knocking her over. "You're going to be my real mom, my forever mom." "I'm already your real mom," Clara said, holding her tight. "The adoption papers will just make everyone else recognize what we already know. You're mine, Mia Parker. You've been mine since that first Saturday in the park when you decided I was worth keeping." "Parker Vaughn," Mia corrected, pulling back with a serious expression. "When you adopt me, I want both names. Mia Parker Vaughn, so everyone knows I have both of you." "Parker Vaughn," Clara repeated, testing the sound of it. She looked at Evan. "What do you think?" "I think our daughter knows what she wants," Evan said, coming over to wrap his arms around both of them. "And I think the taco meat is definitely burning." "I'll order pizza," Clara said, laughing through her tears. "We're celebrating." That night, after Mia had finally fallen asleep, wired on pizza and excitement and the promise of forever, Evan and Clara sat on their bed, still processing what had happened. Clara kept looking at her left hand, even though there was no ring on it yet, like she was trying to convince herself this was real. "We're getting married," she said wonderingly. "We're really doing this." "Having second thoughts?" Evan asked, though he could see in her face that she wasn't. "Not even for a microsecond," Clara said. "I'm just amazed. A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be engaged to you, planning to adopt your daughter, living in a house with a yard and a porch swing, I would have thought they were insane. And now here we are." "Here we are," Evan echoed. "So how do you want to do this? Big wedding, small wedding, city hall with Mia as our witness?" Clara considered this. "I want Mia involved in every part of it. And I want Mrs. Chen there because she's family too. And maybe," she hesitated, "maybe Dr. Morrison, my therapist. She's been such a huge part of my journey to getting here. Is that weird?" "Not weird at all," Evan said. "Anyone you want there, we'll invite. This is about us, about our family. There's no wrong way to do it." "Small then," Clara decided. "Intimate, just the people who matter most, maybe in the backyard. In the spring when everything's blooming." "Spring wedding in our backyard," Evan agreed. "I like it. Mia will want to help plan everything, you know." "Good," Clara said. "It's her day as much as ours. She's the reason this is happening." She paused, her expression turning serious. "Can we talk about the adoption? Really talk about it? Because I want to make sure we're doing this for the right reasons, not just because Mia asked." "What are you worried about?" Evan asked gently. "I'm worried that I'm not good enough," Clara admitted. "That I don't know how to be a mother because I've only had 15 months of practice. That I'll mess up and Mia will regret wanting this. That I'll somehow damage her with my issues and my baggage." Evan took her hands. "Clara, you've been her mother since the day you sat in that planetarium and let her sleep on your shoulder. Since you showed up at her school presentation. Since you chose to learn about dinosaurs and economics and whatever other obsession she develops next. The adoption papers don't make you her mother. They just make everyone else acknowledge what's already true." "But what if I'm not enough?" Clara's voice broke. "What if she needs something I can't give her?" Then we'll figure it out together, Evan said. That's what parents do. We mess up and we learn and we try again. You've already proven you can do that. You've already proven you love her enough to put her needs first. That's all being a parent is. Showing up and loving them and doing your best. Clara nodded, wiping at her eyes. I want to do this right. I want to talk to a lawyer, understand the process, make sure we're following all the steps correctly. And I want to ask Mia again when she's not emotional to make sure this is really what she wants. She'll want it, Evan said with certainty. But yes, we'll do it right. We'll take our time with the legal process, make sure everything is perfect. Thank you, Clara whispered, for trusting me with her, for believing I can do this. You already are doing this, Evan said, pulling her close. You're already her mother. Now, we're just making it official. The next few months were a whirlwind of planning and paperwork. They hired a family lawyer who specialized in adoptions, started the home study process, filled out what felt like 1,000 forms. Mia participated enthusiastically, writing a letter to the judge about why she wanted Clara to adopt her that made all three of them cry. The wedding planning happened simultaneously, Clara and Mia poring over flower options and dress designs, arguing good-naturedly about whether dinosaurs could be part of the wedding theme. Absolutely not, Clara said, when Mia suggested dinosaur centerpieces. We are not having T-Rexes at our wedding. But they could be tiny ones, Mia argued. Tasteful dinosaurs. There is no such thing as tasteful dinosaurs, Clara said, trying not to laugh. Can we compromise on butterflies? Evan suggested. Mia loves butterflies too, and they're definitely more traditional. Butterflies work, Mia agreed after careful consideration, but I'm wearing my light-up sneakers under my dress. Deal, Clara said immediately, because some battles weren't worth fighting. They set the wedding date for May 15th, exactly 2 years after they'd moved into the house. The adoption hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later, once the marriage was finalized and Clara's legal status as Mia's step-parent was established. Those 3 weeks between wedding and adoption would be agony, but the lawyer assured them it was necessary for the paperwork to process correctly. 2 weeks before the wedding, Evan found Clara sitting on the porch swing at midnight, staring at the stars. He brought her a blanket and sat beside her, waiting for her to speak. I've been thinking about my mother, she said finally, wishing she could be here to see this, to meet you and Mia, to know that I finally figured out how to be happy. Tell me about her, Evan said. You've mentioned her, but I've never heard the full story. So Clara told him. About Helen Vaughn, who'd worked 2 jobs to support her daughter, who'd encouraged Clara's ambition while warning her not to lose her humanity in the pursuit of success. About the way her mother had laughed, loud and unrestrained, and how she'd made even their tiny apartment feel like a palace. About her mother's final days, the pain and the fear and the whispered plea, "Don't let grief make you small, Clara. Don't let losing me make you afraid to love." I failed at that for a long time, Clara said. I let grief make me exactly small. I let fear turn me into someone she wouldn't have recognized. But I think she'd be proud of who I'm becoming now, of the family we're building. I know she would be, Evan said. You're not small anymore, Clara. You're anything but small. I wish she could walk me down the aisle, Clara whispered. I wish she could see me marry you and adopt Mia. I wish she could know her daughter finally found her way home. Maybe she does know, Evan said softly. Maybe she's been watching all along, waiting for you to remember her advice about not being afraid to love. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm naming Mia's adoption papers in her honor. Helen is Mia's middle name. Mia Helen Parker Vaughn. So my mother's memory is part of our family officially. That's perfect, Evan said. And beautiful. Mia will be honored. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, warm but not hot, sunny with a gentle breeze that made the flowers in their backyard dance. They'd kept it small like they planned. Mrs. Chen, Dr. Morrison, a handful of close colleagues, Mia's teacher Mrs. Patterson, and a few friends. Mia wore a purple dress she'd chosen herself, with her light-up sneakers visible every time she walked, and she carried a basket of flowers with the seriousness of someone performing a sacred duty. Clara wore a simple cream-colored dress, tea-length and elegant without being ostentatious. She'd left her hair down the way Mia liked it, added a flower crown that Mia had insisted on. Evan wore his best suit, the one he usually reserved for major presentations, and tried not to cry as he watched his daughter lead Clara down the makeshift aisle they'd created in the grass. The officiant was a friend of Dr. Morrison's, a kindly woman named Ruth, who'd listened to their story and agreed to make the ceremony personal. She spoke about second chances and chosen families, about how love wasn't always conventional, but was always worth fighting for. When it came time for the vows, Evan and Clara faced each other with tears already streaming. "Clara," Evan began, his voice shaking, "a year and a half ago, you called me when you were drowning. And I almost didn't answer, but something, fate, intuition, whatever you want to call it, made me pick up that phone. And it was the best decision I've ever made. You've brought light back into my life. You've given Mia a mother who adores her. You've shown me that it's okay to be happy again, that loving you doesn't diminish what I had before. You've made us whole. And I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you that answering that call wasn't charity. It was me finding the other half of my heart. I love you, Clara Vaughn. Thank you for being brave enough to ask for help." Clara wiped at her eyes, took a steadying breath. "Evan, before I met you, I thought I knew what strength was. I thought it was being hard, impenetrable, alone. You taught me that real strength is being vulnerable, is asking for help, is letting people see your mess and trusting them to stay. You saved my life, but more than that, you gave me a reason to live. You and Mia showed me what family means, what home feels like, what it's like to be loved, not for what I achieve, but for who I am. I promise to love you and Mia with everything I have, to show up every day, even when it's hard, to be the mother she deserves and the partner you need. I promise to never stop being grateful that you answered your phone. I love you, Evan Parker. Thank you for believing I was worth saving." There wasn't a dry eye in the backyard. Ruth pronounced them married, and they kissed while Mia cheered and threw flower petals in the air, creating a confetti of joy. The reception was casual, a catered dinner, a cake that Mia had helped design, dancing on the grass as the sun set. Evan danced with Clara to a song about finding home, and then with Mia to her favorite pop song, spinning her until she was dizzy with laughter. Later, after the guests had left and Mia had finally crashed from excitement, Clara found Evan cleaning up in the kitchen. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "We did it," she said. "We're married." "We're married," he confirmed, turning to face her. "How does it feel?" "Right," Clara said simply. "It feels right, like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be." 3 more weeks until the adoption hearing, Evan said. "How are you feeling about that?" "Terrified and excited in equal measure," Clara admitted. "What if the judge says no? What if they think I'm not qualified to be her mother?" "They won't," Evan assured her. "We've done everything right. The home study was perfect. Mia's letter was incredible. Your background check came back clean. There's no reason for them to deny it." "Except that I'm a former ice queen who made your life hell for 3 years," Clara said. "Except that I'm still in therapy dealing with my issues. Except that I'm a completely imperfect person who has no idea what she's doing." "Clara," Evan said, cupping her face in his hands, "listen to me. Every parent is imperfect. Every parent is figuring it out as they go. What matters is that you love her. And you do. I've seen it. Everyone has seen it. The judge will see it too." Clara nodded, but the fear was still there in her eyes. Evan held her close, wishing he could transfer his certainty into her, wishing he could take away every doubt and anxiety. But he couldn't. All he could do was be there beside her, holding her hand through the waiting. The 3 weeks between wedding and adoption hearing were the longest of Clara's life. She threw herself into work, into being the best stepmother she could be, into preparing for the hearing with the same intensity she'd once brought to corporate negotiations. She practiced what she'd say to the judge, rehearsed answers to every possible question, read books about adoption and attachment, and blended families until her eyes ached. The night before the hearing, Mia found her sitting on the porch swing, staring at nothing. "You're worried," Mia observed, climbing up beside her. "A little bit," Clara admitted. "I really want this to work out, sweetheart. I want to be your mom officially." "You already are my mom," Mia said, echoing what everyone kept telling her.
The judge is just going to write it down on paper, that's all. The real part already happened. When did you get so wise? Clara asked, pulling her close. I've always been wise, Mia said with the confidence of an 8-year-old. Adults just don't always listen. She was quiet for a moment, then added, Miss Clara? Mom? Clara's breath caught at the word. Mia had been testing it out over the past few weeks, trying it on for size, but it still made Clara's heart stop every time. Yes, baby? Even if something goes wrong tomorrow, you're still my mom. Okay? The paper doesn't make you my mom. Love makes you my mom. And I love you more than anything except Daddy and dinosaurs. Clara laughed through her tears. I love you too, Mia. More than anything in the world.
Even more than your job? Mia asked. Especially more than my job, Clara confirmed. You and your dad are my everything. The job is just what I do. You're who I am. The adoption hearing took place in a small courtroom that felt both official and intimate. Evan and Clara sat at a table with their lawyer, while Mia sat between them, wearing her favorite purple dress again because she said it was her special occasions dress. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Judge Martinez, reviewed their file with a thorough attention that made Clara's anxiety spike. Finally, Judge Martinez looked up. I've reviewed your home study, your background checks, letters of recommendation, and Mia's statement. I have to say, this is one of the most compelling adoption cases I've seen. She looked directly at Clara. Ms. Vaughn, excuse me, Mrs. Parker, I understand you've only been in Mia's life for about 18 months. That's not a long time in the grand scheme of things. Claire's heart sank. Here it came, the rejection, the you're not ready, the come back in a few years. But Judge Martinez continued, however, what I see in this file is a woman who has completely transformed her life to be worthy of this child, who has sought therapy to address her own trauma, who has shown up consistently and lovingly, who has letters from teachers, neighbors, therapists, and colleagues, all attesting to the depth of her commitment. She smiled. And I have an 8-year-old's letter that says, and I quote, Miss Clara is the best mom, and she deserves to be my official mom because she helps me with math and reads me dinosaur books, and she loves my daddy and me more than her fancy job. Mia sat up straighter, clearly proud of her letter. So here's what I'm going to do, Judge Martinez said. I'm going to grant this adoption. Clara Vaughn Parker, you are hereby recognized as the legal adoptive mother of Mia Helen Parker Vaughn, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Congratulations to all of you. For a moment, no one moved. Then Clara made a sound somewhere between a sob and a laugh, and Mia launched herself into Clara's arms, and Evan wrapped his arms around both of them while their lawyer wiped at her own eyes. Judge Martinez smiled from her bench, watching this family celebrate becoming official. Now, the judge said, we need to do the ceremonial part. Mia, would you like to come up here with your parents? The word parents sent fresh tears down Clara's face. She and Evan and Mia approached the bench together, still holding hands. Judge Martinez had Mia place her hand on a Bible, then asked her the question that would make everything real. Mia Helen Parker Vaughn, do you understand that Clara Vaughn Parker is now your legal mother, with all the rights and responsibilities of that relationship? Do you accept her as your mother? Yes, Mia said so enthusiastically that everyone in the courtroom laughed. Yes, I accept her. She's my mom forever now, right? No one can change it? No one can change it, Judge Martinez confirmed. Forever and always, she's your mother. Good, Mia said with satisfaction. That's what I wanted. The paperwork took another 30 minutes, signatures and seals and official documentation. But finally, Clara held the certificate in her hands. Official adoption record, Mia Helen Parker Vaughn. Mother, Clara Vaughn Parker. Father, Evan James Parker. Date, June 5th. They took photos on the courthouse steps, Clara and Evan with Mia between them, the three of them making silly faces, Mia holding up her adoption certificate like a trophy. Mrs. Chen met them there with celebratory cupcakes she'd made herself, complete with little fondant dinosaurs on top, because everyone needs dinosaurs for important occasions. That night, they had a small celebration at home. Mrs. Chen joined them, along with Dr. Morrison, who'd been given special permission to attend as part of Clara's support system. They ate takeout Thai food and the dinosaur cupcakes, and Mia insisted on reading her adoption certificate aloud 3 times because she wanted everyone to hear it. "This is the best day of my entire life," Mia announced, chocolate frosting on her face. "Even better than Christmas, even better than the day we moved into this house." "Mine too, sweetheart," Clara said, pulling her onto her lap. "Mine too." After everyone left and Mia was in bed, though it took hours because she was too excited to sleep, Clara and Evan found themselves back on the porch swing, exhausted and happy and slightly overwhelmed by everything that had happened. Clara kept looking at the adoption certificate, running her fingers over the official seal, like she needed to keep touching it to believe it was real. "I'm a mother," she said wonderingly. "Legally, officially, completely a mother."
"You've been a mother," Evan said. "But yes, now it's official." "I called my father today," Clara said suddenly. "First time I've spoken to him in 15 years. Evan sat up straighter. "You did? What happened?" "I wanted him to know I'd gotten married, that I'd adopted a daughter, that I'd become everything he said I never would be, someone capable of love and commitment." Clara's voice was soft. "He hung up on me." "Clara, I'm so sorry." "Don't be," Clara interrupted, "because you know what I realized? I don't need his approval anymore. I don't need him to validate my worth or my choices. I have you. I have Mia. I have Mrs. Chen and Dr. Morrison and this beautiful life we've built. His rejection doesn't hurt anymore because I'm not that lonely, desperate girl looking for his love. I'm a wife, a mother, a woman who knows her worth." "I'm proud of you," Evan said, taking her hand, "for calling him, for being brave enough to reach out, even knowing he might reject you." "I'm proud of me too," Clara said, and she meant it. "A year and a half ago, I couldn't have done that. I would have let his opinion destroy me. But now?" She gestured at their house, at the life visible through the windows. Mia's toys scattered across the living room, family photos on every surface, the warmth and mess and beautiful chaos of a real home. "Now I know what actually matters, and it's not his approval. It's this." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came from two people who didn't need to fill every moment with words. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A car drove past. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary neighborhood on an ordinary night, except nothing about this night was ordinary. This was the night their family became legally, officially, unbreakably complete. "I have something for you," Evan said suddenly. He pulled a small box from his pocket, worn velvet that looked like it had been waiting for exactly this moment. "Evan, we already did the ring thing," Clara said, though she was smiling. "This isn't a wedding ring," Evan said. "Open it." Inside was a silver necklace with 3 charms, a letter E, a letter M, and a letter C, intertwined in a way that made them inseparable. "One for each of us," Evan explained. "Connected. Forever." Clara's hands shook as she lifted it from the box. "It's perfect." "Turn the E over," Evan said. She did, engraved on the back in tiny letters. "Thank you for answering." Clara dissolved into tears again, happy tears, the kind she'd learned to let flow freely. Evan fastened the necklace around her neck, and she touched the charms, feeling the weight of them against her skin. E-M-C, Evan, Mia, Clara. A family forged not from biology but from choice, from second chances, from the radical act of showing up when someone needed you. "I love you," she whispered, "both of you. More than I knew it was possible to love." "We love you too," Evan said, kissing her temple. "Our dragon who learned she was really a princess all along." "I'm not a princess," Clara protested. "Princesses are dainty and helpless." "Fine. You're a queen, a warrior queen who fights dragons and climbs mountains and adopts 8-year-olds who need mothers." "That's better," Clara said, smiling. "Warrior Queen Clara. I like it." They went inside eventually, checking on Mia one last time before heading to their own room. She was fast asleep finally, her adoption certificate on her nightstand where she could see it first thing in the morning. Clara stood in the doorway watching her, this child who was now legally, officially hers, and felt something inside her click into place. The last broken piece healing, the last wall coming down. "Thank you," she whispered to Mia's sleeping form. Thank you for wanting me to be your mother. Thank you for seeing past the dragon to the person underneath.
Thank you for teaching me how to love. In bed that night, wrapped in Evan's arms, Clara thought about the journey that had led her here. From that rainy Friday night, drunk in a bar, drowning in grief and loneliness. From the desperate phone call to the one person she'd hurt most. From Evan actually showing up when he had every reason not to. From that first awkward coffee Monday morning, to the park with Mia, to the school presentation, to the kiss in the parking lot, to moving in together, to the wedding, to today, to becoming a mother. She thought about her own mother, hoped Helen was watching from wherever she was, hoped she was proud. She thought about all the years she'd wasted being afraid, all the walls she'd built, all the opportunities for connection she'd rejected. She thought about the person she'd been, the Ice Queen, the dragon, the woman everyone feared, and the person she'd become. A wife, a mother. Someone who laughed at dinosaur jokes and attended school presentations and cried at adoption hearings. I'm happy, she said aloud, testing the words. I'm actually genuinely happy. You deserve to be, Evan murmured, half asleep. I'm starting to believe that, Clara said. For the first time in my life, I'm starting to believe I deserve good things. She fell asleep that night with her hand on the necklace, feeling the 3 letters pressed against her palm. EMC. Her family. Her home. Her second chance at life. The months that followed settled into a beautiful routine. Clara's work continued to be demanding, but she'd learned to set boundaries, to leave on time for dinner, to say no to weekend calls unless it was truly urgent. Evan thrived in his new role, his career advancing in ways he'd never imagined possible. Mia blossomed in 3rd grade, her confidence growing alongside her vocabulary and her ever-expanding dinosaur knowledge. They celebrated holidays as a family. Halloween with Clara dressing up as a dinosaur at Mia's insistence. Thanksgiving with Mrs. Chen and a table full of food from 3 different cultures. Christmas with a tree so large it barely fit in their living room. They took a family vacation to a natural history museum 3 states away, spending 4 days immersed in fossils and exhibits while Mia narrated everything like a tiny tour guide. They had ordinary Tuesdays that felt extraordinary simply because they were together. One evening in November, almost 2 years after that first phone call, Evan came home to find Clara and Mia baking in the kitchen, both covered in flour and laughing at some joke he'd missed. He stood in the doorway watching them, his wife helping their daughter measure ingredients, both of them so comfortable with each other that they moved in sync, and felt his eyes sting with grateful tears. Daddy's being emotional again, Mia observed without looking up. Can you blame him? Clara asked. Look at us. We're adorable. We're pretty adorable, Mia agreed. Even if the cookies are probably going to be terrible. Hey, Clara protested. I'm getting better at baking. You burned water last week, Mia pointed out. That was a one-time thing, Clara said defensively, but she was laughing. Evan crossed the kitchen and wrapped his arms around both of them, not caring about the flour that immediately transferred to his shirt. I love you both so much. We know, Daddy, Mia said. You tell us like 50 times a day. And I'll tell you 50 more times tomorrow, Evan promised. Good, Mia said, because we love you too. Right, Mom? The word Mom, said so casually, so naturally, still made Clara's breath catch. 6 months since the adoption, and she still wasn't used to it, still felt that flutter of joy every time Mia said it. Right, she agreed, her voice thick. We love you so much. That night, after burnt cookies and a dinner of attempted homemade pizza that was slightly better, after Mia's homework and bath time and the nightly bedtime story, Clara stood at Mia's bedroom door watching Evan tuck their daughter in. This was her life now. This was her family. Not the cold, empty existence she'd resigned herself to, but this. Warmth and laughter, and imperfect cookies, and a child who called her Mom. Clara? Mia's voice called. Can you come say goodnight too? Clara crossed to the bed, sitting on the edge while Mia snuggled under her covers. Good night, baby, she said, kissing Mia's forehead. Mom? Mia said, serious suddenly. Do you ever regret it, adopting me, being stuck with us forever? Clara's heart broke and healed simultaneously. Mia Helen Parker Vaughn, I need you to listen very carefully.
There is nothing, nothing in this world I could ever regret less than adopting you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and your dad saved my life. You taught me what love means. You gave me a family when I thought I'd be alone forever. I am not stuck with you. I am blessed beyond measure to be your mother. Okay, Mia said, smiling sleepily. Just checking. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. More than all the stars. That's a lot, Mia observed. You're worth a lot, Clara said simply. Out in the hallway, Evan pulled Clara close. She's going to be asking that question periodically for the rest of her life, you know. Kids need constant reassurance that they're wanted. Then I'll keep answering it, Clara said. Every single time. For the rest of my life, if that's what she needs. You're an amazing mother, Evan said. I know you don't always believe it, but you are. She's so lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, Clara said. I got you both. I got a second chance at life. I got to become the person I was always meant to be. They settled on the couch, Clara's head on Evan's shoulder, both of them tired in the best possible way. The house was quiet, peaceful, full of the gentle sounds of family. The hum of the refrigerator, Mia's music box playing softly from her room, the distant sound of Mrs. Chen's television through the walls. Do you remember that first night? Clara asked. When you drove me home from the bar. Every detail, Evan said. You were a mess. I was terrified. I had no idea what I was getting into. What if you hadn't answered? Clara asked. What if you'd ignored my call? Evan was quiet, considering. I don't know. Maybe you would have found help somewhere else. Maybe you would have figured it out on your own eventually. But I'm glad I did answer. I'm glad I took that chance, even though it was scary and complicated. Because look at us now. Look at us now, Clara echoed. Two broken people who somehow fixed each other. We didn't fix each other, Evan corrected gently. We helped each other heal. There's a difference. You were never broken, Clara, just hurt, just lost, just needing someone to show you the way home. And you did, Clara said. You and Mia showed me what home feels like, what family means, what it's like to be loved, not for what you do or achieve, but just for being you. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only came from knowing someone completely, from seeing their worst and choosing to stay, from building something real from the rubble of their separate pasts. I wrote something for Mia, Clara said suddenly, for when she's older. A letter explaining everything, how we met, how I became her mother, why I'm so grateful she exists. I want her to have it someday, when she's old enough to really understand. Can I read it? Evan asked. Clara pulled out her phone, opened her notes app, and handed it to him. Evan read in silence, his throat getting tighter with each line. My dearest Mia, by the time you read this, you'll be old enough to understand that life doesn't always follow a straight path. Sometimes the best things come from the darkest moments. Sometimes the family you need finds you in the most unexpected ways. I was lost when I met your father, drowning in grief and loneliness, convinced I didn't deserve love or happiness. And then he showed up, this man I'd been terrible to, and he helped me anyway. He saw past the dragon to the broken person underneath. And then I met you, and you changed everything. You looked at me with those big brown eyes and decided I was worth keeping, even though I didn't know how to be a mother, even though I was scared and uncertain and completely unprepared. You taught me how to love, how to laugh, how to be human again. Being your mother is the greatest privilege of my life. Every time you call me Mom, my heart stops for a moment in sheer gratitude. I want you to know that you were chosen, deliberately, completely, forever. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to more than I'd ever wanted anything. You are my daughter in every way that matters. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for being patient while I learned how to be your mother. Thank you for giving me a family. I love you more than words can express. Love always, Mom. Evan wiped at his eyes. That's beautiful, Clara. I mean every word, she said. She saved me, Evan. You both did. I was drowning and you threw me a lifeline, and now I can't imagine life without you. We can't imagine life without you either, Evan said, handing back her phone. You're ours, Clara. Forever. The years continued to unfold, each one bringing new challenges and joys. Mia grew up with two parents who loved her fiercely, who showed up at every school event,
who supported her dreams whether they involved dinosaurs or economics or her sudden interest in robotics in fifth grade. Clara continued therapy, continued working on herself, continued being amazed that she got to be part of this family. Evan watched his wife and daughter grow closer, watched Clara bloom into confidence as a mother, watched their love deepen with time. They had hard days, of course, days when Clara's old patterns threatened to resurface, when Evan's grief over Sarah felt sharp again, when Mia struggled with feeling different from her friends with their normal families. But they faced those days together with honesty and patience and the understanding that healing wasn't linear, that love meant showing up even on the bad days, that family wasn't about perfection, it was about commitment. On the 5-year anniversary of that first phone call, though they called it their family birthday now, they sat together on the porch swing, Mia now 13 and too cool to admit she still loved family time. Clara wore the necklace Evan had given her, the 3 letters worn smooth from constant touching. Evan had streaks of gray in his hair now, distinguished and handsome. Mia was lanky and brilliant and already talking about college. "Can you believe it's been 5 years?" Clara marveled. 5 years since I made that phone call. "Best worst decision of your life," Mia said. "Drunk dialing dad." "Mia!" Evan protested, though he was laughing. "What? I'm old enough to know the story now. You were drunk and sad. Dad showed up because he's constitutionally incapable of not helping people. And then you fell in love and adopted me. It's very rom-com." "It's very real life," Clara corrected. "Messy and complicated and not at all like the movies. But real and perfect in its imperfection." "Gross," Mia said, but she was smiling. "You guys are so sappy." "You love it," Evan said, pulling her close despite her protests. "Maybe a little," Mia admitted. "But if you tell anyone at school I said that, I'll deny it." Clara looked at her family, her husband, her daughter, the life they'd built from broken pieces, and felt that familiar wave of gratitude. This was real. This was hers. Not because she'd earned it or deserved it, but because she'd been brave enough to ask for help and Evan had been brave enough to answer. "Thank you," she said to both of them, "for giving me a second chance, for teaching me what family means, for loving me even when I didn't know how to love myself." "Always," Evan said. "Forever," Mia added. And there on the porch swing, with the evening settling around them and fireflies beginning their dance in the yard, the family that second chances built held each other close. 3 people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together. 3 hearts that had learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, about choosing each other, about believing that everyone deserves to be saved. The dragon had learned to be human. The widower had learned to love again. The little girl had gained a mother. And together, they'd created something beautiful from their separate scars. A home, a family, a forever. Clara Vaughn Parker, wife, mother, woman who'd been lost and then found, smiled at her family and thought about that rainy Friday night 5 years ago, about the phone call she'd made in desperation, about the man who'd answered even though he had every reason not to, about the journey from that dark bar to this front porch, from loneliness to belonging, from broken to whole. "I'm home," she whispered, and meant it in every possible way. "Welcome home," Evan whispered back. "You've always been home. We were just waiting for you to find your way here." And in that moment, surrounded by the people who loved her most, Clara finally understood. Home wasn't a place. It was people. It was choosing and being chosen. It was second chances and brave choices and the radical act of showing up. It was love, in all its messy, complicated, beautiful forms. She was home. Finally, completely, forever home.